This regular board meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act. In compliance with this order, the district will conduct the Board of Education's regular meeting tonight as a teleconference. Please use the following toll-free number and meeting ID to call into the meeting. Telephone 669900-9128, meeting ID 882-1275, 6223, passcode 747442. Or you may join on a computer. The link is on our website at TUSD.org, as well as the board agenda. Public comments can be submitted prior to 3 p.m. on the day of the board meeting by completing the appropriate submission form, which is on our website, https://www.tusd.org/BOE/board-meetings, and it's in quick links on the right-hand side of the page. Participants must be logged into the meeting via the Zoom link published above or by dialing in, and your Zoom participant name or phone number must match the name on the phone number entered on the form so that you may be accurately identified. Reasonable accommodations for an individual with a disability may be accommodated by calling my office at 310-972-6001. President Liu, that is our introduction to the meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Stowe. I'm calling the meeting to order, and first off, Pledge of Allegiance. Vice President Han, would you like to go ahead and lead us?
Sure, please stand. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with justice and liberty
for all.
for all.
Item 6, adoption of the agenda. Is there anyone who would like to move to adopt the March 15th agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. 7, report of closed session actions. There's no report to no closed session actions to report. 8.1, audit presentations, certified public accountant from Nigro and Nigro.
Thank you very much, Board. We'd like to introduce to you Mr. Peter Glenn, who has been our auditor in the past and is still for this year as well. He has completed the district audit as well as the audits through his firm for our bond projects. And Mr. Glenn, if you'd be so kind as to give us some information about our audit this year.
Thank you very much. Good evening, board, cabinet, and audience. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight and go over the results of the audit for the district as well as the bonds. I'll keep it short and to the point, and then I'll take any questions afterwards. That usually goes over well. Basically, we've, in a nutshell, just to sum everything up, we've completed our audit of the district. And in our opinion, the financial statements that have been published present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the district and each major fund. So there were no adjustments that were made to the financials as you saw them in your unaudited actuals. Those were all materially correct. So those are presented. We do see a slight, I don't want to call them an adjustment, but when we go to a government-wide perspective, which is the entire district, capital assets, liabilities, you'll see that in the first few pages of the audit report. And again, those are the government-wide statements. And then you'll see probably what's more familiar to you in the presentation of your financial statements in the fund financials. And so a few highlights, and I know that June 30th is getting pretty far in our rear view mirror, and a lot has happened since then. You've had several, you just hit your second interim report. So a lot has changed since then. But basically what the audit does is it gives you an independent opinion that, as of June 30th, your financial statements were fairly stated, and that, going forward, as you've made your budgets and you've made progress through this year, that you can have that confidence, the stakeholders can have the confidence that there is a verified opinion on those financials. So basically what we're seeing throughout many districts is a decrease in ADA, and your district is no different. So that is certainly something to look at. Your bond program is very active. So we saw a lot of capital outlay, and hopefully in the near future, students will be able to enjoy some of those facilities that have been, created or improved by means of those bond dollars. And again, if I may just move on to your bonds, those all four of those reports were also likewise found to be fairly stated in the financial side. And then in the performance audit, we didn't find any exceptions in any of the performance audits with those measures either T, U, Y, and Z. The most active measure was Measure T. You had about $12.4 million in capital expenditures total, and that measure also had a debt issuance this year. So you received about $5 million in those new funds for Measure T. One other thing of note that I almost just passed right through with your district audit, you had a refunding, and I'm sure many of you probably think back and can remember that was part of the year's process. So that refunding of debt will result in basically a net savings to taxpayers over the long term. And so there was an economic gain. This can be found in note 7 on page 43. There was an economic gain of almost 9.5 million by doing that refunding. And that was of a couple of different outstanding measures. So I wanted to make sure we bring that up. And that can be seen on pages 43 and 44 of your audit report. So I promised that I would keep this to about 3 to 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any with any of the audits that I just spoke about.
It doesn't appear like there are any questions from Mr. Glenn.
Just a comment. That's wonderful that we were able to save 9.5 million for the community. Thank you so much. That's always a highlight we got to mention. This bonds was a win-win for everybody. And so we want to thank again the community for doing these bonds. And we're just glad that the way that this whole panned out, it worked out well for everybody. Thank you.
And I'd like to say, of course, thank you to Mr. Glenn and his firm. The work that they do provides us with the confidence that we need for our financial statements. It's something that I look forward to every year in seeing our audit report and knowing that the work that we're doing by so many people within the district who have financial responsibility is being done well. So you should have confidence in that. I will note that there were findings related to ASBs, the Associated Student Bodies, at a couple of different locations. Unfortunately, that is a regular occurrence in districts across the state, but that's no reason for us to not continue our vigilance. And we will step up efforts on that currently and ongoing to do even better as far as ASB is concerned. But I have looked at each of those findings, and while no finding is better than any finding, the fact that it is in an area that we can put some due diligence into and help non-financial people typically do that work better, I look forward to taking on that task with the help of many people here in the district.
And I would just like to extend my gratitude to the district, Dr. Butler, Judy Chai, Chris Diaz, just to name a few of district personnel who helped make the audit run smoothly this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. Okay, item 8.2, report by student representative and recognition. Dr. Egan?
Thank you, Mrs. Liu. Good evening, members of the board. I'd like to introduce Torrance High Senior ASB President Armin Baglioni, who will share with us some information, information that recently happening with regards to Torrance High. Armin, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Since the last meeting, the students have just been kind of like jittery with coming back. They're still just confused on how many days we're actually going to be in school, how long we'll be there like for the day, and like just like how it'll really work out, because like everyone's just so confused and lost on like how everything will start to just go back to normal. And then in regards to going back, we've just tried to like do some things to smooth it over. Like, for example, ASB is working on a campus tour video for like all the new students. So hopefully they'll just feel like a little bit more like safe, like, oh, like this area over there is like the science buildings, like this over here is the English buildings. And then we'll also just be doing like an update on like new rules, like following COVID guidelines and like how the school is set up now. And then just another thing is that we're working on just collecting hand sanitizer and cleaning wipes just to like help with the school so they don't have to worry about that. And that's about everything new that's happened.
Great, thank you, Aman. Item 8.3, interim superintendent's report. Dr. Stowe?
Thank you, President Liu, members of the board. Armin, I assure you we'll work with you through those things. Dr. Egan and I actually had a meeting with ASB representatives from across the district this past week where we talked about their feelings about coming back, and I think you'll learn some things in the presentation that we're doing on the next item. As for an update, 3 days following our last board meeting, we did welcome back our blended 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders to campus. I'm happy to say that the return went as smoothly as all of the previous reopenings that we've had, and students and teachers and parents are happy to have their elementary schools fully open for in-person instruction again after almost a year of physical closure. Also want to update the board as part of, in our community, as part of our strategic communications initiative. An element of that was good neighbor letters, and we're really trying to address the folks that live around schools, because it's so important for them to know what's going on, to keep an eye on our facilities, and really make sure that that we're good stewards and good neighbors. And so part of this initiative was to mail out letters to households within small proximity or in and around each of our schools. And so all of the elementary and middle schools have mailed their letters, 6,000 of them. High school letters will be mailed out this week. And I did want to share with the board and the community, one elementary principal received a response from a neighbor and in this, the neighbor writes, "In the 46 years we have lived here, your letter is a first. It is very much appreciated. When you address your students, please let them know that when they play outside on the field, to make as much noise as they can. We've missed their voices this past year. We are so happy to see our street filled with cars parked on both sides and children playing soccer last weekend. That's a sign of that life is beginning to return to some degree of normalcy." So this letter is an example, again, of how our schools are part of the larger communities in which we live, and really a driving force behind much of the communications plan that the board adopted last February. We continue to implement this plan and continue the listening with our stakeholder groups, both internally and externally. And that's, but that was a nice letter I wanted the board to hear. And then finally, I'd like to recognize all of our teachers, but in particular our music teachers, because March is Music in Our Schools Month. TUSD has celebrated the arts and they are very instrumental, if you will, in the lives of many of our students. Performances done virtually the past 12 months, our teachers have really done a great job of continuing to make music happened for our students during the pandemic. And so I hope that we will all see them perform in person again sometime soon. So that is it for that report, Mrs. Liu. Thank you.
Thank you. 8.4, reopening of the secondary schools update. Superintendent Stowe.
All right, so back to me. Thank you, Mrs. Liu and board members. At the March 1st board meeting, the board did provide direction to staff to reopen secondary schools on a similar timeline for which we opened the elementary schools beginning in December. The planning for secondary schools for the reopening really began last summer. As you're aware, we built master schedules at that time to allow students to return to in-person instruction without rescheduling entire schools. The LA County is now in the red tier. We are now on track to reopen middle and high schools on March 25th and 26th. And as we've done at the elementary schools since December, and with our targeted instructional programs and special ed programs since October, we will follow the Department of Public Health guidelines and implement all of the required practices to ensure the safety of our staff, students, and our community. Our site administrators, teachers, and staff are working very hard to ensure that all of the pieces are in place for a successful reopening, and tonight we will outline them for you. The dates of March 25th and 26th were selected because they are achievable based on the requirements and our current conditions. It allows for students to be on campus for 3 full days prior to spring break, as well as an opportunity for our 6th and 9th graders to have an on-campus orientation, as they have not experienced their respective campuses before. Then returning after spring break, our teachers will have 8 weeks of in-person instruction prior to finals. For our AP students, it will give them 3 to 6 weeks of in-person instruction before having to take AP exams, some of which are offered on campus. The board has provided strong, steady leadership through the pandemic when it comes to all matters, especially when returning students to campus. And our staff, I'm proud to say, have executed on this guidance, bringing thousands of students back safely to school following DPH guidance. So for a little bit more detail, I'm going to now turn it over to our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Katie Crumpy, who's going to share a little bit more about our process and the details of the secondary reopening. Dr. Crumpy.
Thank you, Dr. Stowe. And thank you, Mr. Mara, for sharing the screen. And if you go forward to the next screen. First off, I really want to thank this amazing group of people. This is a group of our secondary instructional planning committee that have met, except for a brief pause when our cases were surging from the end of November through mid-February. This group has met almost weekly to advise and guide us and give a lot of recommendations on our reopening plan. And I wanted to first and foremost thank them for their contribution to our success this year. Next slide, Mr. Mara. And so before we get started on tonight, I wanted to just do a little bit of a review and a history of what the group has done and how far we've come. It may seem like a really long time ago, but the model that was approved by the board and that was planned for us to reopen our schools in August was an A-B schedule and actually a 6-period day. Students would come twice a week live, and they would see all of their teachers for 6 periods a day. And so that was the plan that master schedules were built on, that our families and our teachers selected distance or blended learning, and that we move forward. Later in the summer, when it appeared that a reopening was going to be delayed, this group recommended that we pivot to a block schedule. We had used that successfully in the spring, and they thought that it would really be beneficial to engage students, knowing that 100% of our students were going to be starting the school year virtually. So as we move forward with this group, and next slide, Mr. Mara, is that we really considered that what we may have planned for in opening in August or opening in October or November is very different. Even we had a discussion before we paused in November to possibly open second semester. As you heard from Dr. Stowe, we don't have a lot of time left at the end of the year. So when the instructional committee came back together in February, there really was a focus on trying to minimize the change and continue with as much consistency as possible for the students and the teachers moving forward. That and the consideration of the Department of Public Health guidelines, we started with keeping a block schedule. So that is the recommendation, is that we keep the block schedule 135, 246. Right away, that does the first thing that the orders, when they came out last Friday, suggest, and that is do as much as we can to reduce the stable group on campus. And so by taking the 6-period day that we were going to do and recommending that continuing with the block schedule, we're reducing in half the number of kids that are on campus each day in a stable group. And it keeps with that consistency that was very important with the instructional committee. Next slide, Mr. Morrow. And so the group then went back and forth with their taking information back to their colleagues at their school sites. And now that we knew we wanted to stay on a block schedule, we talked about what that schedule should look like. And one of the things that was a conversation was whether we should move the Wednesday day, that 1 through 6 day, to Monday. And that move might have given some more instructional options for Tuesday through Friday. They took that back, and then they took a number of models back. And when they came back together last week, a large majority of the schools, I think it was 8 of the 12, recommended that, again, for that consistency, that we retain the Wednesday 1 through 6 day. It's the same day as elementary schools. And we thought, let's not press our luck. We already have an AM/PM model different from the AB model for secondary schools. Let's at least keep that home day the same K-12. And then the model that we're going to share with you is I think 10 of 12 of our sites. The consensus was to go with this model, which is to keep the schedule the same. Periods 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6. And then the Wednesday day. The adjustment, there is an adjustment that has the A group that was going to come on Monday and Thursday, now come on Monday and Friday. And the B group, which would be a Tuesday, Friday, would come on Tuesday and Thursday. But with that adjustment, it really allows for everything else in the schedule to remain the same. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Egan, and the next slide, who's going to, Mr. Morrow is going to show you the schedule. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Crumpy. Good evening again, Mrs. Liu, members of the board. Thank you for allowing us to share this information with you tonight. Armin, I think I'm kind of thinking of you in these next 2 slides with what you shared on behalf of your classmates a little while ago, and I hope some of these visuals help give a little bit more clarity to what to expect. So. This representation shows, if it looks familiar in terms of the perspective of what today's schedule looks like, these current weeks we've had while we've been doing distance and virtual learning, it's because it really is unchanged. So we have blocks 1, 3, and 5 on Monday, 2, 4, and 6 on Tuesday, Wednesday. We've referred to that in some ways as our anchor day, even through the process of the instructional planning committee over the course of the year, that keep it the same so that there's familiarity and opportunity to break up the week by seeing all kids and checking in a manner we're used to. And then of course, Thursday, 1, 3, 5, Friday, 2, 4, 6. As you can see represented in the blue and yellow, it just kind of gives you a sense of, if you're in Group A, Cohort A, you'll meet on Mondays and Fridays on campus. But then it also shows that if you're in the yellow, Cohort B, you still have school. You're just meeting virtually. And we'll get into what that looks like. We have some options for teachers as to how to select the best way they see fit to provide the learning opportunities instruction on those days. But hopefully this is helpful in giving you a sense of it. And of course, you know, what you see on Monday then kind of alternates again on Tuesday, again, Thursday and Friday as well. Let's see, in addition, if you go back just actually real quick, one thing I did want to share is that there's some reasoning behind this. And, you know, this decision to select the movement that Dr. Crumpy mentioned from what some folks thought would be the simplest way to do it, which is, you know, kind of as close to every other day as possible for an individual student. There were a few reasons that the teachers and the instructional committee, through their thought process and conversation back at the site, recognized that were issues to consider. And one of those was that keeping the class schedules as close to the same as they are currently was certainly a priority. You know, the theme of consistency, what people are used to, came up over and over again in their discussions at the school site level. You know, we did hear that a little bit, Dr. Stowe and I, from the students that we met with last week. That was reinforced there. And, you know, so that was one of the things they cited. In addition, what everyone needs to realize is that the distance learning students and teachers, many of them work across through the AB classes as well. And we have some students and teachers who have schedules that are intertwined between those two programs. So whatever we do with students in person has to be identical to what we do with students at home. And therefore, again, reinforcing that concept that limited change is best for all, because now this is exactly what our distance students have been doing all year. It won't be changed in the slightest. And then lastly, most of the schools, the representatives on the instructional task force identified that the conversations at their site these past number of days in which they've been discussing these models in a real deep and meaningful way really resulted in many teachers believing that they would try to do everything they could to instruct and go through the learning process with their students in a manner that's just like they're doing now, which we'll refer to it more in a little bit, but concurrent learning, where they're actually teaching the same lesson to the students at home as the ones that are there in front of them, seems to be initially where many of our teachers are leaning. So this model actually does work really well in that arena because, in effect, students would see their teachers for that in that manner every day, as they do now. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. So the next thing that, and Dr. Crumpy mentioned this briefly just about the bell schedules, but our bell schedules at this point, we need to alter them just slightly. And we discussed this with the instructional committee about the need for our instructional day to be a total of 240 minutes. We accomplish that right now through virtual and distance learning with 75-minute schedules, because we also declare that our tutorial time in the afternoon really includes something that just about every student attends. In fact, actually, that's sort of the expectation that every student attends that. And in discussing this with the instructional committee, there seemed to be pretty quick movement to agreement that if we added 5 minutes to each of those class periods, we now have the total of 240 minutes of actual time in class, whether it's virtual, distance, or in person, and we accomplished our 240-minute threshold. This is going to allow us then for a slight adjustment in our available tutorial office hour times at the end of the day, but really to then just be specifically strategic to targeted populations and individual students or small groups that really need that close extra attention with their teachers, and not mandate that a large number of students actually stay in the afternoon and sit in a classroom to do some kind of a virtual study hall or a constructed lesson by their teacher outside of the regular class time to accomplish those minutes. So we felt that this was a good compromise. And Mr. Meyer, if you can move to the next slide. This is just a real quick view of what this might look like. This excludes all of the Wednesdays. Keep in mind, those are late start periods 1 through 6, done virtually, no change on Wednesdays. This is kind of what the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday days will look like. So school still begins at 9. And then passing periods are 15 minutes. Lunch is still 45. And then, of course, we have some additional passing time and then on into our tutorial office hours at the end of the day. If you notice, it says TBD for 0 period. The number of classes and different groups, types of classes that meet for 0 period at our schools vary. And so we currently also already have, even in virtual and distance learning, some slight variation as to how those work. So currently the schools are finalizing those plans and will present those unique schedules through their parent and staff meetings this coming week to them and share them with students as well, so that everybody understands what those schedules will look like, if they're going to meet on alternating days in alignment with their A group or their B group, or in some cases they may meet virtually, or even consider meeting a couple of days a week instead of just the one. So lots more to come on that, but just wanted to explain that detail. Next slide, please. So as you can probably tell, we've talked a lot about our instructional committee, and I appreciate that we had the opportunity to list all those names and highlight those folks for their great work up front in the beginning of this. That group, along with others who join in that, have some additional recommendations. And so, speaking of the 2 options that the instructional committee have come up with to present for teachers to consider, the first is concurrent. And so that was briefly mentioned. Concurrent really means that whatever I'm doing as a teacher with one group of students in person, the students at home are essentially at the same live moment receiving the same learning opportunity. I'm going to use Dr. Crumpy's example as an example here. She mentioned kind of in her own head, if I were to just take my laptop in which I'm doing my Zoom meeting and virtual learning with me now to my classroom, I probably just take my 15 or so kids out that are sitting here virtually. Now they're sitting in front of me, and I'm going to try to just do everything the same as I've been doing. That's the least amount of change. That's the most familiar. That's the most comfortable. In its simplest terms, concurrent could work like that. There are other ways for teachers to do that as well. Maybe there's a task or an activity that, all kids get involved in at the start of class. And then those at home maybe are working a little bit more independently without the moment by moment contact for assistance with their teacher, because that teacher's attention is on the group in class that are there in person. And then there's a check back in a little bit later to see how that progress is going. That's the similar, but maybe lesser version of the example that I just described. So the other model is, we're calling it synchronous asynchronous. And in reality, I think, it's more or less asynchronous. And what that means is that the students there in person that are engaged in learning with the teacher are doing something that's very specific and then unique and different from those that are at home, who are doing it on their own without the direct guidance and support in a live manner with their teacher and with those classmates that are there on campus at that same time. It certainly is a very viable way of instructing students and for learning to occur. We often see this and have in many years past as something we used to refer to as the flipped classroom, where there's some learning experience that takes place at home, and then when they come back to school, there's the opportunity to validate, reinforce, and practice with the support of peers and the teacher. So that's one way in which asynchronous might work. What we don't want it to be is just an assignment to do or more homework to do, and that's something that the teacher committee and the discussions at the school site through PLCs and the dialogue about the 2 models. Everybody agrees they want it to be a meaningful learning experience where there's new learning that can occur in a very constructed manner, in which students have support and then get further, deeper support when they have the opportunity to engage on campus with the teacher. So with those 2 models in mind, we may even see some teachers who flip back and forth between the 2, depending on the subject and the need and the specificity or uniqueness of a lesson. But with all of those in mind, the committee also recommended some very specific professional development and beginning really, and I remember one teacher in the committee who really eloquently and very bluntly stated, we just need models. You know, they want to see things that demonstrate a successful way of putting this into practice, and then learn from those that created them, how to deconstruct them and then reconstruct them in their own grade level and subject area environment. So that's what our teams of resource teachers and curriculum directors are working on. All of that training, actually some of it began today at with our Pupil Free Day time. And so they're working on models for both of those different approaches to teaching for these upcoming transition times for us. In addition, teachers asked for practice on how to do Zoom with live people in the room for those that are at home. That's more on the tech side of things. And then there's various other technology related trainings that they're seeking support in. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Liberati, and I'm not sure if Dr. Butler's joining him with this one, but there's some updates that they'd like to share specific to the health and safety guidance and work that we've done to prepare our campuses to be safe for our staff and students. Dr. Liberati, Dr. Butler.
Thank you, Dr. Egan and Ms. Liu, members of the board. Dr. Stowe, appreciate the opportunity to share briefly the continued work toward planning, bringing students back. And as Dr. Stowe mentioned at the beginning, tantamount to everything that we do, health and safety, of course, is number one. And some of you may know that task force was created back in May to do exactly that, to ensure that we're following DPH protocols, safety measures are in place, and we've set up a process and a procedure wherein not only are we out looking at schools, but they can certainly, the schools can certainly talk to us, different offices, and request not only information, but also equipment, personal protective equipment, other items to help and support the safety on the campus, such as signage and hand sanitizer, et cetera. But we do continue to review DPH protocols. Over the weekend, we've received some updates. We share those in a timely fashion. We've updated our parent and staff guides to support in a more abbreviated fashion the safety protocols that one could look at quickly and be able to know what to do next should an issue come up. To ensure contact tracing, which is part of the protocols, of course, we follow that in multiple ways, but primarily to ensure safety. If there's an issue on the campus, to ensure that that individual that may be experiencing COVID-like symptoms is separated immediately, placed in isolation, sent home to see a doctor, et cetera, and then working through the quarantine. But together, and I appreciate what Armin said very much, because he's looking at it from a student services and student council perspective, in getting students, because it's our behavior that makes the biggest difference. What we see over and over again in the DPH protocols are the fundamentals that we've been following since May. The 6 feet of distancing, that remains the same. The wearing of appropriate face masks, that remains the same. The good hygiene, the washing of the hands on a regular basis for at least 20 seconds, that remains the same. And of course, if you feel ill, stay home. That all remains the same. And working in a coordinated fashion, again, as Armand mentioned, students, our behavior is critical. I've cited a few departments there. Of course, I didn't mean to leave anybody out. All the departments are doing a fantastic job, not only in following protocols within their own department, their own area, but also in ensuring that we provide a service to the school sites, whatever the school sites need, to support instruction, to support students' return on the campus is our primary focus and our primary objective. So I wanted to cover just a few things. Dr. Butler, if you have a few more things you'd like to add, but I appreciate the time and thank you very much.
Yeah, just a little bit to add. You know, it's funny, if you think back to May of last year, I remember going to Trader Joe's wearing clothes that I knew that I would take off and put into the washing machine, right, and change as soon as I got home. I wore gloves and obviously a mask and eye protection. I remember wiping down everything that I brought home from Trader Joe's with Clorox wipes, right? That's where we were at that time with our understanding, or dare I say, lack of the understanding we have now of the transmission of COVID-19 and how best to mitigate that. So while cleaning and disinfecting were certainly a huge part of how we brought back our first learners, our TK through second grade, and it still remains an important thing. We've just ordered another 20 of the electrostatic backpacks that will disinfect every room when people go home for the day. So wherever students have been, we'll be disinfecting those spaces daily. But that will be with us and continue to be with us. But the cleaning and the disinfecting has been shown to be, while another layer of protection, not as important a layer of where we are now, which is how do we get as many people vaccinated as possible? Good news to report that by the end of this Wednesday, we will have vaccinated everyone within the district, every employee who has wanted to get a vaccination through us. And we know that many more have done so elsewhere. So we feel good about that. Obviously, masking. Very important, something that we all do now in a way that we couldn't even contemplate in the past, but that's been working well. Distancing. Obviously, the 6 feet of distancing, I know there have been some studies out just recently, a couple of studies showing that it might be 3 feet. We'll wait for any change in orders from DPH. We've been following what we've been given in terms of the 6 feet, and that's been working well. And then, of course, ventilation. First of all, maximizing outside air. When you can be outside, be outside. If you have to be inside, open windows, maximize the flow of outside air that comes through your space. For us, in the situations that we have found that may have been less than optimal in terms of air ventilation and circulation, we've taken a couple of extra steps. One is we're in the process of installing bipolar ionization, which is a way of providing an electrostatic charge to air as it moves through the ventilation system before it ever gets into the room. And it's a proven technology that will clump up molecules, be it a smell, like a smoke molecule, or be it pollution, be it COVID. It clumps those into large enough groupings so that our filtering system can remove those before they ever get down into the room. That's the best situation that we have. We have installed that. It will end up being installed in 70% of our square footage district-wide. We have completed our installation in the elementary schools. We expect an installation in middle schools we completed this week, and then we move on to high schools. But in the meantime, in those areas where we're not able to maximize outside air and do not yet have the bipolar ionization, or won't be able to get it because they're again 30% of our area that does not have mechanical ventilation systems. In those, we have made available HEPA filters, the high efficiency particulate filters that are able to clean the air inside of the specific room. So we've had those. And we're just getting into the process of potentially redeploying some of those from rooms that now have bipolar ionization if we need more in other rooms that students are coming back to now that don't yet have the same bipolar ionization. So we're working in order to make sure that every space is that has maximized outside air as it can, that we provide other solutions there as well. But again, it's all layers of a strategy, including vaccination, masking, distancing, and cleaning and disinfecting to make our spaces as safe as possible. We're all very pleased to report it's no one person, one department, it's all of us. We've done a great job bringing back kids to this point. We know it'll continue. We've done a really good job following DPH protocols. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Dr. Butler. A couple more just bits of information with this slide. Site administrators have been working in coordination with ETIS, specifically on the technologies in the classroom to ensure that those are set up and ready to go for the different ways in which a teacher might elect to do instruction. Remember, I mentioned concurrent, synchronous, asynchronous as available options. So we want to make sure that that's in place. And everything is ready to go for those folks. Nutrition Services is finalizing grab and go meals along with logistics associated with that, as well as working closely with the special education department to ensure that we have seamless transitions for our special ed students and the services and supports they're provided with, both now in the virtual distance arenas, as well as when they transition back onto campus. And then lastly, transportation, both for our 8th graders, which that impacts in, two directional, right? We've got the high school impact of that, those students coming and going, as well as when they do the same to get back to their middle school campus, as well as students in our special populations that require the support of transportation. One thing I just want to share is in relation to this picture, and I mentioned that our nutrition services has implemented a grab and go meal. Essentially, it's a box lunch. We know many students will elect to bring their own, but we want to make it as simple as possible for those who do get lunch or meals from us as a school district at their school site. So that'll cut down on a lot of the need for individuals to wait in line or grab food in a buffet style or self-serve aspect that may have been there before. Those won't be options for us, which again limits the ability for any kind of additional and excess close contact that might occur. But in this picture, you can see that's just, those are a couple of students who are in one of our small learning cohorts right now and have the opportunity to be on campus regularly. And this is during mealtime at the school. So they're actually seated on marked locations on a picnic table. And so all of those picnic tables across all of our campuses are set up this way to limit the ability for students to sit in close proximity to one another. They have to sit in this fashion, separate from one another, facing, in the appropriate direction, but not directly in front of one another, because they do remove their masks for a period of time to eat. I know we've received some questions with regards to lunch and the length of time and our ability to supervise that number of students. And so just statistically, I wanted to share just a little bit of information. With regards to middle schools, we might typically have about 700 students on our campuses. Our schools vary in size, but that's a pretty close estimate, of what the majority of them would have. And in those cases, we generally would have meals served inside as well as outside, maybe even some students who can kind of drift off into some places that aren't quite where the masses are. And in those cases, each middle school has roughly about 6 individuals between administrators, campus security, campus lunch supervisors who would monitor the activity during that time. We have the same supervision staff. That hasn't changed, but we're no longer allowing eating to be inside. It'll only be in designated locations outside. We're going to take advantage of the large spaces, even allowing some students to eat spread out on grass areas, where they can be supervised. In addition, because we have about 30% of our student population who's elected at the beginning of the year to be in distance, the number of 700 is already less. So then you cut that number in half with who actually attends each day. We're going to have fewer than 200 students on every middle school campus every day to be supervised during this period of time by the same number of people that we had who were very successful at supervising that activity when it was 700 students. So much the same case with high school, 2,000 students, when you do the math on it, it's reduced down to about 700 who will be on campus. So much larger number, but we do have a much larger team of people, roughly about a dozen adults who would normally supervise that. Again, no setup for eating indoors, the grabbing of the box lunches or bringing their own in their backpack, which they would then go to designated locations that they're allowed to be and eat under the supervision of those staff members. So we had the opportunity to visit a middle school in Orange County during the lunch hour who have been open since September. And, some of the takeaways that our administrators came back with was that, number one, wow, where are all the kids? They just felt like they were expecting to see so many people, but it just wasn't the case because of the numbers and dynamic that I described. But what they also remarked was how well behaved the kids were. They ate their meal, they sat appropriately. When they finished, they threw their items away, and then they put their masks on, and then they engaged in the allowable activities from that point forward. So learned a lot, gave us a lot of confidence that we can do the same. Thank you. Sorry, that was a long time on this slide. Next slide, please. I'll try to move us along here. Just some things that we have in terms of additional planning and work. As Dr. Stowe mentioned up front, he and I met with high school student leaders, and we engaged in a question and answer session with them. They were very candid. We asked them some things that they might be concerned about. We asked them some things that they liked about distance learning, and then we kind of asked them the same, about coming back. And so, as Armand mentioned, we heard from kids, there is some concern. I think there's a high degree of enthusiasm. I just think it's cautious. And that was kind of what we heard from the students directly. We'll be meeting with middle school student leaders this Wednesday in a very similar forum. And, I kind of would be surprised at this point if I hear much different. I think there's enthusiasm to come back. But, I think students are excited for things to be the same as what they used to be. And they're realizing, and, they're smart people and know that it's going to be different. So I just think that difference is the part that was clearly demonstrated in their words as the part that they were reluctant about. As was mentioned, we're collaborating closely with folks that we've either just recently gotten to know or people we've had relationships with over a period of time who have been doing blended learning on campus with students since September. And we're learning quite a bit. They're being very open and candid and sharing good practices with us, as well as some schools that we visited. And we're taking advantage of the fact that we have our elementary schools open and have for some time. And there's been a lot of knowledge gained and a lot of things learned that we can apply right away our first time through because of their willingness to share with us. Next slide, please. So this last part with regards to reopening has to do with stable groups. And this is new language that's being used by the Department of Public Health. And Dr. Stowe mentioned it earlier. Dr. Crumpy alluded to it as well. They've made the recommendation, not a requirement, but they've made a recommendation that a best practice is to work within a subset of students that we don't allow to intermix with other student populations across the campus. And the idea behind that is that it'll help to mitigate any potential issues should there be a positive case on campus that would limit the spread of it. It also is beneficial in terms of contact tracing. If there was someone who did test positive outside of the school day and we became knowledgeable of it later, when we go back and trace students, we're now dealing with a fixed population of students. Their recommendations are in the ballpark of about 80 students. They do say best practices to not go beyond around 100 to 120 students. When we've run our numbers, and so we did this by looking in Power School, we just randomly selected students across all grade levels 6 through 12. And then trace them. Who sits in their A cohort in first period, in third period, in fifth period, and then the same for second, fourth, and sixth on those days in which they'll be on campus. And what we found was the intermixing, whether it's at high school or middle school, among those students is they'll come in contact in classrooms with a unique group of no more than 40 students in most cases. There's some circumstances where it's more than that, maybe dependent on kind of an elective class or a PE class, both of which are probably going to be taught outside at this point. But in the classroom setting, each class has about 16 students. And so times 3, that's 48. The fact that many of those students actually have the same schedule means it's a repeat. We don't count them more than once. We were less than 40 on nearly every student we tested, and we tested several dozen. So that was really encouraging to us. The Department of Public Health's recommendation on stable group populations that intermix, they want it to be limited to around 80. And we find that we're far below that. Now, this excludes passing period. This excludes lunch, in which there could also be some cross population of kids who interact with friends who aren't in any other classes. And we recognize that. But in all of those cases, we'll be applying the same strict guidance by the Department of Public Health for outdoor gatherings in which masks are still in place, social distance is still in place. And if there were any kind of COVID positive case, we believe that in those settings, we wouldn't even be looking at situations where there was anyone in a situation that was considered a close contact, because they're not indoors. They're not seated for a prolonged period of time next to another person in close proximity. So very encouraging news for us there. That number of 150 to 195 just indicates the number of students in a particular grade level in the high school level that would be on campus in an A group or a B group on a given day, versus what I don't think I listed it here, but for middle schools, the number is somewhere around 60 to 78, I believe, or 85. 85 was the highest number in a particular grade level on a given day. So we just know that I share that with you by grade level, because we know that's where students more than likely have their friendship groups, who they are going to likely have classes with, similar grade level individuals. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more on this, as was mentioned, the idea is for stable groups is to limit the intermixing. We found that in those cases, we're at the number of 40 or fewer, both middle and high school. A/B groups at the middle school criteria is somewhere between 60 to 80. We've looked at those numbers very closely, and ours are in the 60 to 85 range. So we're right in line. If a student were to daily on campus be in contact with every peer in their grade level, which we know they're not, but if that were the case, these would be the numbers. And high schools, of course, exceed that by some, but we do have a high degree of confidence that there isn't intermixing of an individual student with every single one of his grade level peers on a given day, or hers. Okay. The last thing, just before we get into athletics, I'm sorry, when it comes to the lunch and passing periods or adherence to the protocols and masking in particular, another question that we've gotten, and I've been included on some that I know the board's received as well, have to do with what happens if a student doesn't comply or follow those rules. And we're going to treat it the same as we would any other significant issue of defiance on campus. And of course, we're going to educate. We're going to reinforce the right messages, demonstrate the appropriate behavior, but we'll also be watching closely and work with those students to correct the behavior. So if behavior is consistent and persistent in a negative manner, then we'll work through the process similar to our discipline matrix on how to address and correct that behavior, involve the parents. It's certainly not what we want. We would never look at this point to find ways to exclude kids from school, but if it became a safety issue, then that's absolutely what would be discussed, is the potential of that student no longer having that privilege to be on campus and maybe being enrolled in one of the other programs in which they could do from home if that's the degree in which their behavior was that excessive. So I just wanted to share that in the context of the mixing in other aspects on campus. Okay, sorry, thank you. Let's go to athletics. Just some updates with athletics very briefly. California and then quickly following suit, Los Angeles County Department of Public Health have created guidance that allows us to now permit indoor sports. With regards to indoor sports and all of our sports, we're going to continue with our conditioning, skill-based activities, live scrimmages, those types of things. So so far, so good. That seems to be working out very well. We're going to continue with all the strict adherence to masks, daily health screening, and regular protocols that have become the norm and practice for us out there. Next slide. And then finally, this just gives you a visual of the sports now that are indoors that would still be upcoming. They've mostly been practicing via the conditioning model or practicing outside. I see on the lawn out here in the afternoons, volleyball coach from Torrance High and his squad practicing with nets they put up on the grass. So there'll be an opportunity in the near future to move that practice and season indoors where they're used to being. Same with basketball and wrestling. In those three cases, those bolded sports, those are the newest ones that are added with this new guidance. There is a requirement for regular COVID testing. We're currently in the process of identifying a party or multiple parties to assist us with that process, because we just don't believe this is something we can take on entirely on our own, or just refer to a third party outside of the boundaries of our school district buildings. So we're looking at ways to utilize existing buildings on our campuses with an outside group of medical professionals who would bring tests and produce an opportunity for testing to occur on some scheduled days for these sports teams, likely to be a couple of times a week on each of the campuses, working out those details, and hope to have that in place by the 1st of April. So more to come. We'll share that as we get there. And then lastly, before I turn it over to Dr. Stowe, I just want to add, we hope that the board hears this message loud and clear, and that Armand, you and your student friends and teachers and staff, that masks, social distance, and hygiene, we're going to message that so often and thoroughly and loudly that it's just the top priority. It's the best way to keep everybody safe and healthy. And principals are already preparing those messages and signs and auto updates to their daily bulletins for students, that it's just a message that repeats itself over and over again, and we just can't say it too many times and often enough. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Stowe to close.
Thank you, Dr. Egan. And President Liu, members of the board, we wanted to be very thorough here with you tonight. We know that you're receiving some emails, and just want to continue to ensure that you have the confidence in the work that is happening at the school sites. As we've demonstrated since September and early October, hundreds and now thousands of students back on campus. We're doing it safely. The Department of Public Health has recognized the education sector in conference call after conference call. And in fact, we have had a seat at the table with conversations with leadership at the Department of Public Health in the safe reopening of schools. And so, we will continue to do that and message that and make sure that the year closes on a high note for all of our staff and our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stowe, Dr. Crumpy, Dr. Butler, Dr. Liberati, and definitely Dr. Egan for wonderful presentations. I do feel much more confident after hearing how the secondary schools are going to be reopened. And now we're going to have the oral communications from the public before we have questions and comments from the board. Chief Mara, are there any oral communications?
Yes, we have some. I will pull up their names and I will let them unmute themselves. First person, we have Jillian. Jillian Hart. Go ahead, Jillian.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much. Hello specifically to President Liu and to members of the board and the cabinet. My name is Jillian Hart. I've been a high school teacher in our district for 23 years. I am a parent also of 2 secondary school students at 2 different campuses in our district, and I have had the pleasure to serve on the district's reopening task force since last May. I requested to speak to the topic of reopening because I first wanted to say, from all 3 perspectives, I have been consistently proud of the collaborative nature and the spirit of consensus that has dominated my experiences. And I have been defending most of the decisions because I can point to the efforts that we have all done what was best for the greatest number. That said, I'm also speaking to express my disappointment that on the topic of which date the secondary campuses were going to reopen, teachers and staff and families were never consulted or even invited to have a say in what day we could celebrate our students coming back. So to be clear, I am for reopening the campuses and for our students returning. I'm very excited about that. But I'm also for reason and for data and consensus, and sending out a survey would have been really easy for our stakeholders, and it would have given us data to inform what our decisions would have been and then would have framed our mindset. So I know we can't make a decision that would please everybody. So the best we could do would be to determine what would make the most sense for the greatest number of people, which is why stakeholder input would have been logical and it would have been useful. I do recognize the eagerness of some members to reopen as soon as possible, but the concept of possible should consider readiness and not just what is achievable. So as it is, we are opening next week, but I did want it known that even though you guys have been planning and discussing for many months, the truth is we as teachers are being given a single day to transition from everything we've developed and planned to a completely new reality that we have yet to have training for. And it's also at a time that a lot of us have to get subs because we have vaccine appointments that we made prior to knowing we would be back. So that's how fast this has all happened. And the irony for us is every secondary teacher has to participate in PLCs that are based on and driven by data. It's so important we devote time every week so it can inform our instruction. But the choice has been made not to collect any data on the reopening date. And this is something that's going to impact thousands and thousands of students and staff. And we don't know whether it was the right choice. So I do think that there are a lot of reasons to praise the district and the school board and the task force and the union and our staff and our community and our kids. They have had incredible resilience. But I do want to voice that it is regrettable that we are ending this ordeal without the same spirit of consensus and data and solidarity that we started with. Thank you for your time.
Okay, next we have Maria Crawford. Maria, go ahead, you can unmute.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Maria Crawford. I have a 6th grader at Richardson. First, I do want to thank the board and the committee for getting everything ready. The work that you all do does not go unappreciated or unnoticed. I'm also very grateful to the administrators and teachers who've done a fabulous job this year. It's been 1 year since virtual learning started. And since that time, we've listened to scientists, government and health officials, unions, teachers, administrators, and parents. And I think it's time to listen to our kids. They may not be voicing their opinions as loud as the adults, but they are showing it in other ways. Many of our kids feel anxious, scared, depressed, and secluded. And for those with special needs, they are regressing. I'm here tonight to speak for those students, the ones who cannot advocate for themselves. School is about academics, but for special needs kids, there is so much more that they are learning by having neurotypical peers around. Most special needs kids do not have club sports right now. They're not hanging out with friend pods or having play dates. Their social opportunities are limited if there are any at all. They need the schools open for the social opportunities. And the longer we wait to be back in school and mainstreamed as we have worked so hard to achieve, the harder it's going to be for our kids to transition from the comforts of home with mom and dad back into a classroom. I thank y'all for opening on March 25th, but I urge you not to only reopen, but to use that date as a launching pad towards a fully active plan to reopen all of our schools, K through 12, in person, 5 days a week to those who want it and need it. We can do this safely. I know there will be problems, but you cannot keep kicking this can down the road thinking it will be easier, safer if we just wait a few more days, weeks, or months. My biggest concern is if we don't start reopening now, what are we going to look like in the fall? With the money our district will be receiving in COVID relief, I can't think of another reason why we can't open our schools safely at this point. It's been over 370 days. It's time to get a sense of normalcy back into our children's lives, because at the end of the day, no matter how great a teacher is online, a Zoom square is never going to replace the benefits of a live teacher. Reopening our schools on 3/25 is the first step. I thank you. It's the right thing to do. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. Next, we have Julie Schenkel. Go ahead, Julie.
Good evening. President Liu, members of the board and cabinet. I'm Julie Schenkel, the secondary distance teacher, and I'm an officer for the Torrance Teachers Association. Tonight, I come to speak to the anxiety continuing to be placed upon TUSD educators as a number of structural issues with the instructional models have caused undue confusion, workload, and stress as the reopening of campuses have been implemented over the past 4 months. We have been able to work in good faith, and tonight I come to, in that good faith, to suggest taking health, safety, workload, academic program, grading periods, building lessons that work live, concurrent, synchronous, asynchronous, host of other issues. Just take a moment to pause as the decision makers in this district. I suggest that maybe reopening campuses on April 12th rather than March 25th would still meet your priority to reopen as soon as possible while providing minimal disruption to students and educators. I know you've heard from many constituents and have been asked many hard questions. Just know, I'm not here to say do not reopen, as some people seem to think we seem to be saying. TTA leadership has never adopted that position, nor do we now. Tonight, I come to ask on behalf of my colleagues, though, that you reconsider what you're asking of your students and employees to do on such short notice. Everyone has worked hard on all of this, but you're no longer opening one grade level at a time. Within a 2-week span, you will have reopened 9 grade levels with unresolved structural problems still existing at all of these levels. I realize it's crunch time and that you and administrators may too be feeling a bit anxious for a variety of reasons, but just know, I have faith that no matter what decision you make, teachers will step up and teachers will do the excess work and teachers will struggle through the stress and teachers will act with professionalism and proficiency because that's who we are. But also know that teachers will not forget feeling burned out with the unresolved issues that still exist. In TTA, we use a 4-step cyclical process where we listen, we plan, we act, we evaluate. TUSD has listened, they've planned, they've acted. I'm not clear on how well they've evaluated the prior campus reopenings with so many issues remaining. Dr. Stowe told me the other day that there was no good time to reopen. Tonight, he says it's achievable. I agree with him. It's going to be stressful for students and teachers alike, no matter what. And it can be done, but it will be exponentially more stressful and anxiety ridden with more unresolved issues with the earlier date. So when no time is good time, pick the better time. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Next, we have Mayor Beth Borowski. Go ahead, Mayor Beth.
Hello, Board of Education. Thank you for hearing me out. I just wanted to comment on the process of reopening and the date that was chosen. And of course, we want to go back. We want kids to go back and we want to do this for everybody, but we also want to do it in the least disruptive way possible. So that's why we were concerned, many teachers, when we found out that the date was pretty much set from the administration and then to the school board, that dates have already been put out and we were never consulted on that. And so we're talking about a collaborative process here. So the elementary has been doing this for a long time, and now we kind of thought that it was a possibility to go back, and it just seems that it came very soon. And it's helpful if we have collaboration when we discuss the date to go back, because there are a lot of issues. We're all scrambling to make sure our technology works so we can do concurrent teaching. We're all ending the quarter. We already have lessons already planned. And so that is a problem. And if there was money that the district could have gotten because we could have opened by April 1st, if the district would have come to the teachers and said, we have this opportunity to get more money for the schools. can you reopen before April 1st? And can you make that happen? And this is how we're going to spend it. And this is how the kids are going to benefit. I'm sure that teachers would be all behind that. But it's just that we don't know if that's why that was chosen or and also one of my friends, she texted me today, she's from Manhattan Beach, and she asked about, she said, I heard that Torrance is reopening. And I said, yes. And she said, oh, is it because of the governor's plan? And, you know, that's what people are talking about. So I just wanted to put it out there. And I appreciate being part of the instructional committee and that you listen to us to talk about the models and what would work best. But I really wish that you had collaborated with us on a start date to make things smoother for a start process. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Beth. Next, I have I can't seem to find him. So let's go with Carlos Antwater. Go ahead, Carlos.
Good evening, everybody, members of the school board. Thanks for taking the time to listen. And thank you for the amazing amount of work that you guys have been doing to make the reopening possible. I'm also excited to return as a secondary teacher. And I also want to thank Dr. Stowe specifically for mentioning Music in Our Schools Month. As a music teacher, I'm particularly appreciative of that reference. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that in Music in Our Schools Month, as we return to school, most of our music students won't be able to play their instruments because LADPH has still not given guidelines for wind instruments, and us music teachers are struggling with that a little bit. So it would be great to get some feedback on that. But the main reason I'm calling is to echo much of what my colleagues have said already. I too am excited to come back, but I too am concerned about the opening date. I've had conversations with many teachers, with students, and with parents. I also am a father of a child with special needs, as well as neurotypical students. And in all these conversations, there have been many compelling reasons to wait until after spring break. Things like, you know, with the start of athletics and other school activities, the students are able to socialize and get together, and with the reopening more generally as well. With the end of the quarter right before spring break, it puts a lot of pressure on grading and all of that, and it makes more sense to wait until the new grading period begins right after spring break. Waiting creates more time to implement and refine protocols and to train teachers and staff on the new technology, which will make the reopening safer, more efficient, and more effective. I mentioned the technology. There is a lot of new technology that we have been going over in all of our PLCs, and it is daunting. We have not been properly trained on it. Much of it is brand new to us. And in many cases, including in my room, the tech hasn't even been installed yet. So as we move forward, it would be much better to have this extra time to make sure everything is ready to go and that we are ready to go and we are properly trained. All that to say, I'm sure there are reasons to start on March 25th. And I'm sure those reasons are compelling. But as you have heard from others, we are not hearing any of those positive reasons, other than it appears that we're going back simply because we can. I trust this school board. You have been very receptive to input from stakeholders. This is a noticeable shift from previous years, and it is very much appreciated. So I would hope that in your time of discussion that you would be able to share with the public what some of those positive reasons are for the March 25th return. And I heard the timer, so thank you.
Hey, is that your clock?
Thank you, Carlos. Next, I have Ryan Rasson. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you. I'm a parent, and I am very, very grateful for all your work to get kids back into school. We need them back in school. Middle school high school kids back in a classroom. You know, the president of the California Teachers Association, Toby Boyd, you can read this quote in the Torrance Teachers Association newsletter. If you're listening to this, Google Torrance Teachers Association, read their newsletter, read what they've got on their website. Here's what CTA President Toby Boyd said, quote, "No one wants to be back in classrooms with students more than educators who know there is no equal substitute for regular in-person learning." And that's what we need. And the great thing about teachers and staff, and Dr. Stowe, thanks for your email 4 days ago. You said, we're very pleased that by this week, 1,000 Torrance Unified School District employees will have received their first vaccination through the district's vaccine allotment. Celebration, community. If you're listening to this, we have a chance to get our kids back to in-person instruction, which they desperately need. What I find so frustrating or regrettable is all this talk about delay, all this talk about nobody's talking to us. When are we going to talk about our children falling behind in their learning? How many are so far behind that they're not going to graduate from high school with the right level of learning to succeed in college? This newsletter from the TTA is talking about it's the teachers who are going to have to police student compliance as discipline issues. How about learning? How about write more in your newsletter about teachers learning? If you're on the board, you get it. You put your names on a ballot, you volunteered to serve. Remember summer of 2018? This same Torrance Teachers Association wrote this headline, "Despicable district behavior prompts action." They were upset about the school calendar, the unpopular calendar change. When are we going to talk about our kids learning? If I have to hear about electrostatic backpacks and bipolar ionization and the other nonsense that we keep hearing on these meetings, a lot of us are going to wonder, it's not just a hashtag, vote them out, which the Torrance Teachers Association pushed out 2 years ago. It's, are any of you paying attention to our kids? Dr. Crumpy, please, how are the kids doing? Are they learning? Please get our kids back in school, in a classroom where they can learn. A lot of us are now finally kind of waking up to what our state sadly has experienced for a long time, which is that too many kids slip and fall through the cracks. They fall behind and nobody's paying attention. Start talking about kids learning. Talk more. For every mention of electrostatic backpack, talk about learning.
Thank you. Your time is up, Brian. I think you've also got Lily and Caleb there who signed up to speak. Pass the mic to them.
Go.
It's your turn. Hello, my name is Caleb Razan. I'm a sixth grader in Richardson Middle School. And I think we should go back to school because I haven't even seen my classrooms yet, inside of them, or even my locker. So, and I'm a little bit nervous because I haven't actually been there. Well, yeah, kinda. And yeah, I think we should go back to school because
Good. Tell them thank you for serving.
thank you for serving. Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Lily's going to pass. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you. And last, we've got
Good job.
Deb Bush.
Good afternoon, President Liu, school board members, Dr. Stowe, cabinet, and the Torrance High student representative. Deborah Tabush, proud president of the Torrance Teachers Association and second grade teacher, 1619 Cravens Avenue. As Torrance Unified and the school board continues to work on how to move forward with reopening schools for grades 6 through 12 The health and safety of employees, students, and community needs to continue to stay at the forefront of the decisions being made. This has been TCA's message since March of 2020, and we are getting the job done. What we need to work on is plan, act, evaluate. TTA leadership knows there are many varying points of view on how to move forward with reopening the remaining grade levels. There has been time to evaluate the pluses and deltas from the K-5 rollout, yet K-5 teachers are still working to adjust to the plan that was implemented in December. There has been a lot of less than ideal circumstances that TUSD educators have had to navigate. Examples include the continuous movement of students from distance learning to blended and vice versa many times, repurposing staff and/or creating independent study contracts for students not attending in-person instruction, stressful and full of anxiety. With that being said, one important goal TUSD must have when working to reopen grade levels congruently in the middle and high school is to minimize the number of disruptions and logistical issues. There are valid concerns by many educators about third quarter grades being disrupted if middle and high school students go back to in-person instruction prior to spring break. Reopening 7 days to the end of the quarter results in teachers having to halt critical instruction, projects, and assessments that were slated to be finished before the end of the term. This is not about stopping the reopening of our schools. It's about doing it better for the secondary sites with the health, safety, and instructional well-being of our students in mind. Thank you.
President Liu, that is all. Those are all the speakers for tonight on this topic, on this item.
Great, thank you, Chief Mar. Right now would be the time for any board questions to staff or comments. I will go ahead and start. I want to thank you to the parents and teachers and members of the public for your comments just now. I also appreciate the input expressed both tonight and through your emails and meetings with me. All of you have overcome many challenges during this pandemic, and I commend Dr. Stowe, the cabinet, our teachers, and other school employees for your hard work and resilience this school year. We, the board, our superintendent, cabinet, and staff planned early for the physical reopening of our schools. In our planning, we have consistently followed the recommendations of the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. When they told us to physically close our schools, we did so. When they told us we could safely reopen schools for our grades TK to first grade, we did so. When they said school districts could apply for a waiver to safely reopen second grades, we did so. When they said we could safely reopen elementary schools up to 5th grade and 6th grade, we did so. The reason why we open school campuses as early as the county lets us is because we know in-person instruction is best for our students. With case rates dropping and the Los Angeles County moving from the purple to the red tier, the Department of Public Health has informed us we can now safely reopen secondary schools if we follow health and safety protocols. I believe we should continue our successful approach and safely reopen schools when the medical experts at the Department of Public Health says we can do so. I believe March 25th is an appropriate date that gives everyone the notice they need to physically reopen all of our schools. All of us need to work together during these unprecedented times. We are always adjusting to changing circumstances due to this pandemic. And I look forward to continue working with Dr. Stowe, the cabinet, teachers, parents, students, and other school employees as we meet the challenge of physically reopening our school campuses. Thank you sincerely for your resilience and your perseverance. Are there any other board members who is interested in making some comments or questions for staff? Raise your hand if you do. No one wants to go first. Vice President Han, would you like to go?
I have a quick question. Dr. Egan, can you explain for the kids that are 8th graders who have high school classes, how that will work out?
Sure. So in some cases, well, in all cases, they'll be a part of a cohort A or B if they're a blended student that's returning, and they'll attend that class on that campus with their classmates, just as they would for the other class periods they have on their middle school campus. In those cases in which, other than Cali Mayor and Richardson students where they just walk back and forth, we'll be transporting them via district bus as we would have normally. Of course, adhering to the protocols on the buses, which limit the population on the buses to 12 students, 12 to 13, I believe, on those sizes. So in a couple cases, we'll be having additional buses from what we would normally.
Dr. Mohammed?
Thank you, President Liu. I just have a couple questions. Just one is for Dr. Butler regarding the bipolar ionization or something that we kind of installed. How I know that we haven't installed all of them, or that there's still some that needs to be installed in some of the classrooms. How soon can we get that in? Assuming that we're all obviously starting on the 25th. Will we be able to meet that?
So we will not be able to meet that for all 70% of our square footage. We will be able to have done, elementary was finished last week, middle school will be finished this week. Then we're moving on to high school. And again, we do have the HEPA filters for rooms that we are not able to do the bipolar ionization yet. But the goal is to have the original goal was June 30th for everything, and we're working well ahead of that schedule right now.
So we do have HEPA filters installed where we don't have the bipolar in there?
We have HEPA filters available. They've been ordered by the different schools. For example, we'll finish South High's order, I believe Wednesday, the rest come in, and that should finish all the orders that we have for HEPA filters currently, and more in stock if needed.
Oh, okay. And then the second question was along, I know that there's some courses that, are like quarter classes, and how would the impact of the return on the 25th impact those particular courses that kind of end on April 2nd?
I'll take that one. So I believe you're referring to classes that are quarterly issued
Yes.
credit, for example, like physical education.
That's right.
Yes. So in those cases, the grading period would end during the time in which students now have returned to campus. And so in those cases, be a chance for teachers to view and work with their students in person in those physical activities classes prior to issuing their final grade. So we, granted, was mentioned by teachers about some potential adjustments in instructional plans that they had. I believe one mentioned having plans done out for several weeks out into the future. So this is the kind of thing that would be adjusted in those cases instructionally by those teachers, whatever those plans might be, to now actually have in-person opportunities to see demonstration of progress in those physical activities that they're working on in those skill sets.
Okay. I'm trying to understand if there would be any major disruption for those aside from adjustments, but would there be?
I think it's really probably teacher specific in terms of what they had planned, knowing that we have science classes that might have virtual aspects of labs that they have already prepared and designed. And we believe that really just about anything they could just bring into the classroom in this model. But I former high school principal, former high school teacher, I do want to recognize and understand that this is transition period. And, so it comes at a time in which some Some people may have had things planned out. I don't believe that those teachers who work ahead several weeks, it would be any different at any other point, though. They do work ahead several weeks as a general rule for their practice in some of those cases, as did I. I would remark that the end of the quarter period, though, the report card that's generated at the high school level is a progress report. And as such, generally speaking, there aren't major projects or examinations through a special examination period that exist at the end of a quarter. It's generally determined by cataloging all of the progress up to that point and then identifying that as a current reported progress graded report card. A little bit different in middle school where the term does end. Although, again, it's a report card in which there is not credit issued towards a high school diploma or transcript. It's a middle school report card, which is important. At the same time, recognize that, again, there's no special exam period or lengthened schedule for a special day for the kinds of things that occur at the high school at the end of a semester. So we see that there's always some transition disruption in a case like this. However, we believe this is an optimal time to do it minimally.
Thank you.
Dr. Gerson?
Well, Mrs. Liu, I had written a statement that I was going to also read, but you did such an amazing job in your presentation that I think you kept it short, accurate, and such a good job. I just want to compliment you on it. And now I feel like I can't say or don't want to say anything because you've done such a good job. I did have one question, Dr. Egan. So you said that I think 10 of the 12 secondary schools had felt comfortable with this new AB model, the Monday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday model. Am I getting that accurate?
Yes, yes.
Could you please tell us a little bit about how, I know not all schools could have done it in the same way, but would you kind of explain how, if you know, how a couple of them came to this decision, how they work together, anything that you could tell us?
Of course, happy to. First, for the benefit of the board and those not involved in the process tuning in, the committee, there was 6 different schedule models identified in which the committee discussed at length with Dr. Crumpy and I. Then their charge was to go back to their campus and engage in a conversation around the pros and cons of each of the various models and have a robust discussion and attempt to highlight what those strengths and weaknesses would be in conversation with one another. And then the representatives from each of the school sites were charged with coming back to the committee a few days later after that conversation and characterize what the discussion was like at the school, highlighting pros and cons. And if so, sharing with the committee and with us, if they felt they had a consensus opinion at the school site as to which of those models stood out that they would most like to see be the one that became the committee's recommendations. In addition to the conversations, a few school sites engaged in a consensus straw poll of text message or in the chat box, some kind of a characterization of how each individual teacher felt. We did not ask them to do that. Some chose to do it. We felt as if the best data would be the authentic discussion around the merits and troubles of each of the models. So that was essentially the process. And as a result, the conversation that occurred back with Dr. Crumpy and I was the conclusion, reporting from each of those individuals representing their conversations at their site, that 10 of the 12 felt that the model one, the one in which we shared with you tonight, one of 6 different models was the one that they all leaned heavily towards as a school site.
I have a couple
Ms.
of
Park?
questions. Yes, yes. I had a question again about the scheduling. So Dr. Curvey, you mentioned that the keeping Wednesdays as late start days and 1 through 6 instruction, that was to align with our elementary schools, but I wasn't quite sure because we don't have cross enrollment necessarily from our elementary and secondary schools, why that alignment was seen as something that, yeah, that was enough of a positive benefit or limiting disruption to keep it on Wednesdays. And then related, was also curious about, so we had talked to, I know that there were some concerns that potentially having students in person on Mondays and Fridays and then Tuesdays and Thursdays could lead to potentially families traveling and considering their schedule as a long weekend. But Dr. Eden, you talked about how they're still expected to be in school virtually on those days, so it wouldn't necessarily be days off for students. But yeah, I was just sort of curious if you could explain a little bit more why not Mondays and Thursdays and Tuesdays and Fridays instead, because in that case, they would still have the synchronous instruction for both groups prior to Wednesdays. So just a couple of questions there. And then another question was, you had talked about messaging to students and teachers and everyone on campus the importance of following health and safety protocols while on campus. What is our messaging for students on how to be responsible citizens both on and off campus? I think compared to our elementary school students, our secondary school students have a bit more independence, and rightly so. I think that they should have more autonomy as they are growing older. But how are we being able to emphasize the importance of acting in the same way that they would do on campus, off campus as well? And what are ways that we can try to mitigate some of that risk for students interacting after school hours or before?
So yeah, really good question about the Monday and Wednesday. And I think there are a variety of answers that the instructional committee brought back once they took the information back to their teachers. And I think one of the things we really were trying to do is stay consistent. And so we have Wednesday already as a day. And so we were trying to not make a lot of changes to people's schedules. But we do, and so we were already, I don't want to say pressing our luck, but when the instruction committee met throughout the summer and the elementary portion of the committee was wanting an AM PM model and the secondary was wanting an alternate day model, we already thought that we were asking our families that have elementary and middle school kids to have to arrange those schedules accordingly. So we felt that this late in the year that there may be a lot of possible childcare issues with families. There could be older brothers and sisters that because they're home on that day, they may be allowed to kind of corral the younger ones, and that kind of thing. We also have staff that have elementary kids back on campus and might have to pivot if we were to change that day because they can teach from home on that day and be there as childcare options for for their families as well. So we were so this came out. In fact, the instruction committee, that wasn't part of the initial discussion. The instruction committee, asked for that Monday as an option. It's when they went back to their staffs in total and came back that they had said, no. Well, 8 of the 12, 4 of the 12 did, of the secondary schools did prefer the Monday. We gave each of them a chance to talk, and all 4 of them indicated that there were explanations that hadn't been considered, and they thought when they brought those explanations back to their campuses that everybody would be in agreement. So that was the main reason why the group recommended to keep, to keep that Wednesday. And then I know I do want to reiterate again, you said Dr. Egan answered your question, but we really do want to make sure people know that it is quite possible that a B track kid who is asynchronous on a Monday, or I should say is at home learning on a Monday, could have all three of their teachers do concurrent instruction, and they would be logging on just like they would on a Monday or a Friday now. But they also could have, as Dr. Egan mentioned, something log on, log off, do an assignment due at the end of the period. So it is absolutely, the expectation is that regardless of whether you're in school or at home learning, that you are still in school for those 240 minutes, 5 days, 5 days a week. And then lastly, I think, as we have principal meetings, I think you bring up a really good point, Jasmine, to bring up to our principals how they can message, that not just at school, because we do have a really high compliance at our school, but how to keep kids in school that are happy to come back is kind of contingent on us following the rules outside of school too. And so that hasn't been part of the instructional committee discussion, but I think it's something that we'll put on the principal agenda and bring up with them so they can plan accordingly. It's a great idea. Did I hit everything?
Vice President Han.
Just a couple more questions, if you don't mind. My AirPods kind of died on me here. The first question is, so Dr. Egan, on this concurrent teaching thing, some kids are being kind of sarcastic here a little bit. They're saying, well, if it's concurrent, so on certain days, can I just stay home? Certain days, can I just go in class? Certain days, stay home, because it's concurrent, right? And so I can either watch it at home or I can see it in person. That's not the case, correct?
No, when they're assigned to be at school, they'll be taking attendance for being at school.
Okay.
If they're not there will be a phone call home. We'll go through the regular process of that. And to reiterate what Dr. Crumpy said, because I don't think we can say it enough, school is all 5 days. And learning is in the allotted time and schedule for students for the same allotted number of hours defined by those periods as it is today. It will be when we return to school. The only difference is that 2 of those days they get to do on campus. Everything else continues the same, and they're expected to be engaged in learning, connected with their teachers and classmates for those minutes every one of those 5 days.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is that I know we're gonna get a lot of emails about this, but can they change? People that were blended go back to distance, and distance go back to blended. Let's answer the question now, just so that we have it here, because I know that we're gonna get inundated with this question. So I'm not sure if it's Dr. Crumpy or Dr. Egan would like to answer that question.
I think we could probably both answer it in unison, but we have said from the very beginning, pick wisely. And that's why we did this master schedule planning, especially this late in the year, so we wouldn't have disruptions, in the instruction for our students. So we have said, if you want to switch, it's space available. And so that's the plan, moving forward.
I'm just going to add ditto. We won't do it in unison, and not to make light of it. People have their own misgivings and concerns, and we fully respect that. And so, principals have already started those communications back with some of those families, expressing concern and empathy is number one, and then number two is, how can we help you feel better and more confident in having your child come to school when you're reluctant right now, knowing that originally your choice was in favor of this. So there's a process that they're each working through. It's a very sensitive nature task, but one that I know is a challenge they're all up to. And to the parents out there listening who might be skeptical, just know we want to have your children at school. We're very confident in what we're doing, and that we can do it safely, and it's the best place for them to learn. And I'm speaking on behalf of principals who just can't wait for the campus to be filled with kids again. And you know, much the same sentiment as the neighbor letter that Dr. Stowe read. The last thing I'll say on this is that I'm meeting with activities directors at the high school, and I'll be meeting with middle school principals and assistant principals shortly later this week to talk about the kinds of spirit and culture that can be created on campus during this time that we've sorely missed. And so, you know, I don't imagine for a second that we're going to be short of hearing music blaring on campuses during lunch and passing period, and make it a really eventful, joyful time where kids they're glad that they came. And, you know, and they're going to talk to their peers about how good it is to be back, and how much they want to see them there with them.
Final question and a comment. Final question is, Dr. Egan, so the last board meeting, I'm the one who brought up the observers. And I actually read the LADP protocols. And obviously that was a matter of interpretation. And we corrected the interpretation. At the meeting itself, it was told that it was people who have perhaps a special needs kid who was playing football, so that you have that person from the household do it. And so that was explained to me at the time, and I think was correct at the time. But obviously, we took a different approach on that interpretation of observer. Now we allow 4 people per household to watch a person's game, which I was very thankful for, and I'm glad that we made that decision. Because obviously there's nothing added to the protocol that was there. It was something, it's a matter of our interpretation. Regarding that, on the same basis on that line of reasoning, the question is about cheerleading. Cheerleading is clearly stated in the protocol as an outdoor sport, right? It's considered an activity. So the question becomes is, why is it that we're not allowed to have the cheerleaders perform the games? If it's clearly stated in the protocol that it's an outdoor activity, outdoor event, I don't know what LADPH was thinking, what was their mindset, what they thought cheerleading was all about. But to me, it seems clear that it is something that should be allowed because of the fact that where we are now in the red tier. And so I just wanted some clarification. Is it another one of those matter of interpretations? If we were to allow it, are we be breaking LADPH protocols? I don't think so, because to me, it seems to be clear that it's allowable.
So I'll take this one, Mr. Hahn. So in the DPH meeting on Thursday of last week, the specific question about cheer was asked, and Dr. Gilchek's answer was that having 2 activities occurring in the same location simultaneously would add to crowds, and their message is to reduce the number of people at events. That being said, and again, that was Thursday, about half an hour before this meeting started, we got an email from the DPH saying that the youth sports guidance is being updated. So we will look at that closely, but we're also speaking to our other districts who we have been very close colleagues through this whole pandemic, to make sure that to have those conversations about how they're interpreting it. We will also submit the question again to the DPH for our Thursday call this week. So I wouldn't rule it out, but it was asked and answered specifically about cheer at football, and the response was their goal is to reduce the number of individuals at any one event. You know, taking into consideration that if cheer were to be at a football game, for example, that's going to add another 50 to 100 people in the crowd when following the 4 observers per household. So we're not saying no at this point. That is the answer from the DPH, but we're going to continue to look into that this week and look at those new guidance documents on youth sports when they get released.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that I clarify. Thank you so much. Just a final comment. So obviously it's been a year, literally a year that we have been locked down, and we are now at this moment. And so I want to express my gratitude to all the cabinet, to all the administrators, to all the teachers, that we're at this point now where it should be a moment of celebration that we're now getting all K through 12 back by March 25th. And so I want to say that it has been an interesting ride, as our President Liu has articulately, just wonderfully stated in her statement, all the things that we have done in order to follow the protocols of LADPH. And my only regret is that we did not open up sooner. I think we could have opened up sooner. I think that some of the restrictions that were there were too much by the protocols. But again, we did what we believed was safe for all of us. And so I am grateful that we're able to come to this moment itself. And I understand that March 25th may be very quick for a lot of the teachers have mentioned as well. But I think our idea about March 25th reopening is also a testament to our faith in all of our administrators and teachers to get it done. As one of the speakers said, that they know that our teachers will do whatever the task that's given them. And they have so far shown that reality. We have seen it through our K through 5th. I want to applaud all the teachers and administrators for making it happen. The reason why we can do 6 through 12 is because you guys set the example. We had no outbreaks on any of our campuses ever since we opened up. Zero outbreaks on all our campuses. It's a testimony to all our administration and our staff and our cabinet for the well preparation that they've done. At the same time, it's also a testament to our students that they have been wearing the mask, they have been social distancing, they have been washing their hands. I have visited the campuses, I've seen these kids. I've gone all through K through 5, I've seen every level. And these kids have been fantastic, as well as the teachers and the staff. And so I'm grateful. And that's why I have the full confidence that in our 6 through 12, that we can achieve the same standard. That I believe that no matter what date we choose, that we will produce the same results. Our protocols have been stellar. And again, it's a testament to the cabinet and the administrators for all the hard effort and work. And I want to recognize at the same time that you are right. As the speakers have said, that it requires so much from the teacher, a lot more stress, a lot more work. And I want to acknowledge that. I don't want you to think that we do not see it. But what we do want to say is that we appreciate your sacrifices. At this time, this whole year, sacrifices have been made by everyone. And we truly, truly appreciate all the sacrifices from the teachers, the administrators, the parents, the students. And we have gotten through this all together. And as we said, you know what, the best way for our kids to learn is for them to come back in person. Last board meeting, we saw a report of our distance learning, and I was discouraged to see some of the results, to see what has been happening to some of our students. And I believe that it is urgent for our students to return as soon as they can. This has been my passion. This has been our board's passion, to get our kids back as soon as they can, as long as it's safe. And I sincerely believe that it is safe because LADPH has said it's safe. And so therefore, there's no reason for us not to open up on March 25th. So again, I express my gratitude to all of you, to the administrators, to the teachers, to the parents, to the kids, for all your sacrifices. And I look forward to seeing the wonderful results when we open up.
Dr. Stowe, in regards to the cheerleading, I was thinking that the county stated teams from 2 or more schools cannot compete at the same time. I interpret that to mean that cheerleading tournaments where teams from multiple schools compete, that would not be allowed. That is different than weekly or football games where cheerleading is normally goes on, and I think that it's different than what the intention of the county protocol would be. Otherwise, there's no reason why they would specifically list cheerleading under as an allowable sport under the red tier. So I would request that you look into this and get clarification from the county, because I believe that's what they would mean, that it's cheerleading tournaments that are not allowed and not cheerleading at a football team. football game.
Okay, we'll certainly look into the specifics around that. Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Stowe. Dr. Mohammed, please go ahead.
Thank you, President Liu. I'm assuming if the county health office does allow cheer, that we would right away implement that. My assumption is probably for competitive cheer that they've probably put a halt on that, but for regular cheer might be okay. But that's my opinion. I don't know. But yeah, as soon as we can circle back with the county health and then implement it, if we do have a green light on that, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, and as we've done all along, following the DPH guidelines. Indeed.
If there are no more questions or comments from the board for staff, I will go ahead and move into our next agenda item. Okay. Agenda item 8.5, Schoology Learning Management System. Chief Mara, can you make the presentation?
Yes, this is my presentation, so let me get it started here. Let's see. My sharing. I'm used to sharing other people's presentation, not my own. There you go. Can we see that or not yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
1 second.
Well, Chief Mara, you're so used to doing multiple things at once. You're the guy behind the computer and the network, so no problem with this one.
Give me 1 second. Finding my button. Might even be better for Rob to do it. Rob, do you want to go ahead and do that?
Sure, but I need to find it and pull it up. We have a few different versions as well, and so I need to make sure I get the right one.
As he's pulling it up, I can go ahead and start speaking to it. Actually, hold on. Are you almost there, Rob?
Getting there.
Okay.
You'll give me ability to share the screen.
Yeah. Actually, I think I've got it, Rob.
Okay.
Can we see this? All right. Okay. So, sorry about that. So President Liu, members of the board, my colleagues on cabinet, parents, teachers, and staff that are watching this tonight, we're going to present to you a learning management system called Schoology, which is owned by PowerSchool. You might think that it's kind of odd to be looking at a new system, especially after the discussion we just had with regards to all the things that we're trying to accomplish in the coming weeks and the next couple of weeks. However, I think it's actually the perfect time to look at a new system because we're now looking into the future. Like no time before, technology has been put in the forefront, right, of what we're trying to do here in instruction and collaboration and work with our students and our parents. There was an article today in the Washington Post titled How the Pandemic is Reshaping Education. And the premise of the article is that some of the things that we've seen in this past year, right, when it comes to how we deliver instruction, collaborate with one another, and the role of technology, has played may actually last into the future. Meaning some of the things that we've implemented when it comes to instruction, whether it's virtual instruction, we may be able to take some of these elements and improve upon how we deliver instruction in the future. So after literally a year ago, when we went on shutdown, our teachers, and you heard Deb DeBush say, basically made it happen. And a lot of us went home and delivered instruction from home, some of us from within our classrooms, and we relied on 2 different learning management systems in order to do this. So we had TUSD, which is based on Moodle, which has been in the district for more than 10 years, and a little newer, Google Classroom was also available to a lot of our teachers. So you chose one or the other. Any teacher that built their classes and courses on either of those 2 platforms were able to kind of adapt pretty quickly. And quite a few folks learned either one or the other in order to move quickly into the virtual environment. So what we're looking at, or what we're exploring right now, is the possibility of finding a cohesive learning management system where we can actually do better. What we learned over the past year, and as the weeks and months went along, were some of the deficiencies of either of the systems. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. We've already started the presentation. Let me introduce, of course, I have to introduce my hotshot team here from our educational technology side of the department. We have Rob Johnson, Sophia Vong, and Tara O'Brien, our tech lead teachers, who've been really instrumental in supporting our teachers in this virtual environment, and continue to support them in the coming week. So we're going to go through the presentation. We're going to get a little technical in some of Schoology, and then talk about what the plan is after that. So I will go ahead and advance. The idea with Schoology is that it was designed around each stakeholder in mind, right? So when PowerSchool acquired Schoology almost 2 years ago, they were looking for a system that could integrate all the things that are part of the student information system, PowerSchool, and integrate it seamlessly into a learning management platform. So the acquisition of Schoology lends itself well to finally bringing together all the disparate parts of our learning systems into one, we call it pane of glass, one place where all of your digital resources can be viewed pretty easily without having to jump in and out of different systems. So this is just an infographic here. With Schoology, it integrates with your Google Classroom, some of our textbooks, Kami, Pear Deck, Nearpod. So just imagine being within the Schoology environment, that you no longer have to actually leave that browser in order to get to these resources. And so you'll see a little more on that as we go along. I'm going to go ahead and let Sophia talk to this teacher piece here. She gets really excited about this, so I said, all right, these bullets are yours then.
I'm actually going to tag team with my partner Tara tonight. So she's going to take on the left bullet points, and I'll be handling the bullet points on the right.
All right, so hey everyone. I'm going to speak to, just like Sophia mentioned, the left side of the screen here. So currently many of our teachers are using Google Classroom to share content and curriculum. With the switch to Schoology, we made it clear to our teachers that Google Classroom will still be available, and we plan on making a gradual transition. So unlike Google Classroom, Schoology eliminates the need to have students and teachers have separate logins for different apps, tools, and sites. Schoology, like Gil mentioned, is all-encompassing and incorporates access to all Google tools, meaning you can utilize and attach files in your drive, such as slides and docs. If you take a look at the first point to the left, you'll see that Schoology now provides interface options, which is a point we continuously advocated for. We weren't sold until this was an option for our teachers. So previous committee meetings with teacher reps across all levels shed light on the need for an elementary interface option. This resulted in Schoology taking that feedback and revamping the options offered. So we're pleased to share that an elementary interface will now be an option for next year, and it differentiates for younger learners, as you will see on one of the following slides we're going to show you. If you take a look at the second point, it simply highlights how Schoology's ease of use will save teachers time since everything is in one place. Student View is available for both teachers and parents. Paraeducators will have access, and a mobile app will be available as well. Schoology will also allow teachers to track student activities. Unlike Google, that comes with limitations. Teachers will have more options with assessments, including the ability to set a timer for assessments to accommodate IEPs. Conditional access and restrictions will be available based on a wide variety of criteria, such as cutoff times. But once again, we're going to detail other options in just a moment. We have a lot of details on that. There will also be integration with PowerSchool with direct access to grades, attendance, and courses will be automatically created and rostered. You can also see that there's going to be textbook integration, and it does depend on which textbook. Some textbooks will offer a full integration, while others may allow for a single sign-on. We have another slide later on in our presentation that's dedicated to detailing this information. I'll speak to that last sub-bullet point that mentions online services that are integrated, and that includes Edpuzzle, Pear Deck, Khan Academy, Nearpod, and so many more. And these are all just great EdTech tools that some teachers utilize regularly, if not on a daily basis. And I'm going to hand it over to Sophia now.
So on the right side of your screen, you see functionality, and that's actually my favorite part of Schoology. Google assignment-wise, anything that teachers have loved, used, and or created themselves this year will all be usable in Schoology. So I'm going to say that again. Anything that you've used this year in Google Drive and Google Classroom can all be used in Schoology. So part of the fun thing about Schoology is that Schoology assignments, you can directly upload from Google Drive itself, any of those files, or from any of your teacher devices or staff devices. Again, and I didn't want to forget this, so I scribbled it on like a Post-it note. So one of our educator colleagues said, imagine, or using the analogy of a suitcase. So Schoology is, so all the different LMSs are suitcases, and Schoology is a different, more efficient and functional suitcase that will help you become more organized and more time efficient. Speaking of which, improved quiz and test assignments within Schoology, they have a more robust option for assessments. And if we move one slide forward, this is actually one of my favorites. There are 19 different question types within Schoology for creating assessments, and they really do emulate CASP. If you look at the different question types listed, multiple choice, ordering, and I'm going out of order because of timing, audio, video, file upload. In our slides, all of these are linked to further explanations and exploration. And there are 2 video links, one for label image and one for highlight image that you can also peruse during your own time that walks you through how to use those different question types. So if we go back one slide. Perfect. Students within the assignments and the assessments, within the assessments also have CASP-like tools. They can flag questions, eliminate answer choices. They have calculator, highlight text, notepad, and even text-to-speech toolbar within that. So standards-based grading, I really like that. As teachers are creating or uploading assignments, they can tag or label each assignment based on the standard. And that lends itself beautifully for AR time, for efficient use of tracking grades, for AR, and aligning those assessments to all of these standards that we typically scramble to figure out like which grades go where. But because it is synced with PowerSchool, that saves our teachers and our staff a lot of time in that sense. Content sharing, I'm going to touch on this a little bit more, a couple bullet points down, so I'm going to save that one. That's one of my favorites. Feedback features. As a teacher, you can give a text comment, you can give an audio comment, or you can do a video comment. Students can also reply to your comments. You can attach exemplars or further models for students to look at, and all of the comments are listed and organized under revision. Now, with auto course creation and rostering, this is definitely another time saver because it's synced with PowerSchool. All of your courses and classes will be auto created and auto rostered for you. Now that means if you have a student that transfers from your class to another teacher's class, or if you get a new student, all of that is auto created for you. Secure testing on Chromebooks. There is an app, a kiosk app within Chromebook that you can use for secure testing. And then here's the part with the content sharing. Collaborative groups. Within Schoology, we want to make sure that all of our teachers are leveraging the power and knowledge and resources of their peers. So you can create collaborative groups within your grade level, your content, your department, within your site, within our district, and even tap into public collaborative groups and leverage whatever resources are available to the public. Now, that doesn't mean you have to share all of your resources and materials. A teacher did say, like, do I retain my rights and all of my materials? Absolutely. That means you can pick and choose what you want to share publicly or even within groups within the district. So that's one of the key and important features because I feel like we want to save time. Next slide. And we're going to go a couple slides over and then Gil's going to.
Yeah, so Sophia, if you don't mind, yeah, we'll just show some of the question types that are here on the slide.
Sure. So sequential ordering, fill in the blanks, and all of these are, again, are linked. So if you want to peruse to see more and get more information, you just click on the image. Label images, this was popular, especially with labeling science images, geography, social studies, so things that we haven't had available in Google Classroom. Oh, and I forgot to mention, one of the most requested things that teachers wanted in Google Classroom is the ability to hide topics or materials from students, but still retain it. This is possible in Schoology. Highlighting text. And again, these are just very similar to what students are tested on or in that scaffold or in that structure for CASP.
So I'll take it from here. So as Tara mentioned, that there is also an elementary course template that we expect to see next year. So here's a little snippet of it. PowerSchool gave us a preview of it. And the secondary course template, for those of you who use ETUSD now, it's organized pretty easily and it's very easy to, it's got a nice user interface and I think the students will feel very comfortable in it. So will the teachers, especially if you've used ETUSD in the past. And one of my favorite things, I think, from the admin side, is that you'll be able to take attendance right inside of Schoology and not have to pop out to PowerSchool, the SIS, in order to take attendance, in addition to doing grades. So when you do fill out an assignment, the grades actually automatically sync to the PowerSchool. So no more double entering of your grade assignments between whatever you're using now over into PowerSchool. And we talked about this a bit more earlier about textbook and online service integration. There's quite a lot here. One quick example, STEM scopes. Right now is quite the manual process. Students and teachers have to go out in the STEM scopes in order to look at the material, the digital material there. They can now stay within Schoology and their classes roster from PowerSchool over into Schoology and into STEM scopes, so that again, from a single browser, they can get to their resources without having to jump to different resources. Parents and students, Again, more access for them. A parent can actually view what their child is seeing, right? So sometimes we get a lot of calls, you know, my student is trying to get their homework, but I have no idea what they're talking about. So the parent will have access to actually log in and view their courses the way their own child sees it. So that really helps us, especially when it comes to supporting the families at home. Okay, and of course they have access to their academic content, attendance, and gradebook. So this provides our two-way communication or enhances the communication between us and the families. On the admin side, there's a lot. Right now, as an administrator myself, in a lot of our systems, I have no control actually over Google Classroom. Google doesn't provide any tools for us to help troubleshoot what the teachers are trying to do with their Google Classroom instances, although Rob, Sophia, and Tara have supported them and they've done a really good job. But again, Schoology does give us more granular control and with all of the settings and permissions that you would expect in a really full-featured enterprise system. One thing we did want to highlight, we invest quite a bit in applications and systems that we believe can really live inside of Schoology. So some of the items we have here, we may not need to renew, like Grade Transfer, which we purchased this year, because Schoology will sync with PowerSchool. But yet we also have investments in a lot of publishers and other systems, and we'd really like to take some of these systems and make it look more cohesive and comprehensive for our students and our teachers. So quite a big investment already with some of the things we have, as you can see here, and I think it will just enhance, you know, the experience with these applications by using Schoology and pulling it all together. So where do we go from here? We're actually in listening mode right now. Like I mentioned, we have had informal discussions with several teachers. We've had demonstrations, a sandbox, which a few teachers have played in and looked at. We did a presentation last Wednesday to secondary and elementary teachers, again, just to kind of kick the tires and to see where we go with this. I want this to be a teacher-driven initiative. It's not something for myself. I want everyone to see the value in this, and I think there is a lot of value in this. From now until April 19th, we'll continue to present more information, answer a lot of questions. We have an open FAQ or an open Google form right now where teachers are putting questions in, and we'll be replying to those. And we'll do more open town hall discussions about this and see if we can come to a consensus with this platform, if this is the way to go. So lastly, why Schoology? It is owned by PowerSchool. At this point, it is the learning management system that makes sense because it is the most tightly integrated system at this point. So I'm open to any questions, and I know presently we do have one speaker for this item. If you'd like me to call on her.
Yes, please. Please call. Go ahead and have the orals.
Sure.
Hello.
Go ahead, Mary Beth.
Hi, everybody. I was very excited to speak to this item tonight because I just wanted to give a big shout out and a big thank you to Rob and Gil for the rollout of this Schoology and how it all happened. And I love that right from the get-go, you included the teachers and you asked the teachers what we wanted, or you presented it and said, this is what we think would work the best for you. And you included us in the process right from the beginning. And I love that it was a slow rollout. We talked about it in TTA and we asked a lot of questions, and I love that we have options, and we have the option of trying this out if we want to, or just waiting. We have a lot on our plate right now. So the thought of a new grading program, I think, raised everybody's effective filter, and everyone went back to, oh my gosh, when Power School got rolled out right before we got started in the fall one year. And the way that Rob and Gil did this, it really brought down our anxiety, and we're really excited to try it. So thank you for this, and we're very excited. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Beth. More to come. That's all we have, President Liu. We'll take any questions if you have any.
Yes, Ms. Park?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think we've had a conversation before as well about like, why is interoperability so hard and why weren't student information systems and learning management systems integrated before? So it's great that we are keeping pace with the efficiency that seems to be very prized in other industries. And so I had a question about tracking student activities and what our communications will be, first of all, what user analytics will teachers have access to, and how are we going to be communicating that to students and families? I think that is just, it's like knowing what information is being collected about whether, when I access a particular lesson, or how long I've spent on anything, that's information that students may not be aware is being tracked, and whether, if at all, that information will factor into student participation or actual grades. So that's a question that I put my student privacy hat on. I feel like I needed to ask that. And then also with regards to customization, it's great that Power School and Schoology allows for more troubleshooting on our staff's end, but I was curious about if there was a desire to customize more the interfaces more, or for particular teachers, if there were certain features that are not in the menu of choices that they are given access to, what would the process look like for working with Schoology, and what would there be additional costs there, or is it inclusive with our contract?
Thank you for the questions, Ms. Park. Regarding the tracking and the analytics, we actually will have more data than we have before. One of the issues we do have with Google Classroom, especially, not so much with TUSD, is the inability to view how much activity there is between a student turning in an assignment or logs. For example, like if you're wanting to log how many students are looking at an assignment, turning them in. So we have that ability now, or we'll have more ability using Schoology, and on the teacher end, being able to run reports and seeing progress of a student on a particular assignment and when they turn it in, or what time date stamping of particular assignments. And I don't know if Rob wants to add a little more. He's done a lot of that kind of work on the ETUSD side. As far as customization, it's a large product used by multiple school districts, and it's cloud-based. There are tweaks that a teacher can use, right? So if they want to hide certain panels, hide certain courses or assignments, that they can do. But the overall look and feel, or the UI, the user interface, is pretty standard from one school district to the next school district. The biggest change that we saw was their willingness to change the elementary interface. That was big for us because, well, elementary is different from the secondary level, more graphical, more colorful, right? And a little easier to navigate for our little ones. Rob, I don't know if you wanted to add a little more to how we
It's just, we do get requests from teachers and parents on almost a weekly basis to prove or disprove that a student did something in Google Classroom that we really have no data or records on. And ETUSD does provide that in-depth reporting, but it's a lot more complex to use than Schoology is. And Schoology provides a good middle ground between those two.
And then Ms. Park, one other thing to add, depending on the application or the publisher, right, that we're using, they provide some analytics also. For example, if we're looking at Kami or some of the other applications that we've purchased, you know, we get monthly, weekly reports as to the usage of them. And that helps to, you know, allow for decisions as to whether or not we continue to subscribe to some of these applications.
Yes, no, I definitely recognize the utility of having that information, but and just in terms of transparency, it would be great in the training as we are onboarding teachers onto this new platform to also provide guidance on how to talk to students of different grade levels and give them an understanding of what information the teacher or parents or others may have access to about their activity on this. And I think just in terms of increasing their digital literacy skills and understanding data flows, that's really important.
Most definitely, we will make that a point to ensure that that's part of our training and rollout.
Gil, just a couple questions. How does this relate to some of the other LMSs that are out there? For example, Canvas. Have you kind of looked into some of those and see how that?
Yeah. So actually, yeah. So this actually isn't a new discussion, and it started about 5 years ago actually with Rob, when I had Rob and at the time Phil Busey go to a learning management system shootout over at Centinela Valley School District. And as you know, I actually have known Rob for almost, I think, 15 years now. So we go back to our teaching days. So I trusted him to go out there and take a look. He's very technical, and really pick apart what the shootout, you know, come back with the results. It was going to be Blackboard, Canvas, Schoology, a couple other learning management systems that have since faded or been acquired by others. And even then, Schoology wasn't owned by PowerSchool at the time. It was a standalone company. And the consensus from the group of districts that were there was that, you know, Schoology was number one, and then Blackboard, and then I think Canvas, and then a couple of the others. So Blackboard, very expensive. Canvas, I don't remember any other features that were outstanding that Canvas had delivered, unless Rob can remember from 5 years ago. I believe Canvas is still around. It is used by other SIS, by other districts using a different SIS. It can be looked at again if you wish for us to look at it and just and do a apples to apples or a feature set comparison. I think that'd be fair to ask and look at. Right now, I don't want to say a no-brainer. Nothing seems to be a no-brainer these days, but with the acquisition of PowerSchool, of Schoology by PowerSchool, and the tighter integration and the fusion of both development teams now over the last 2 years, it'll only get better, especially after we saw the integration of the grades and now the attendance piece that's built into Schoology, which I doubt Canvas will have. That you open up a Canvas screen, you're not going to be able to do attendance right inside of Canvas. You're going to have to pop out back into Power Teacher and take attendance. But I can verify that if you like.
Can I just jump in there?
Dr. Gerson, who was Mr. Gerson when he saw this initially.
Well, I know it was more than a year ago. I had seen all these videos and teachers were raving about it. And I was watching it, how excited they were. And they said they were real teachers and they were just so super excited, but there was no fact in it, like no they didn't show any examples of teachers do anything. And that's when I came to you and said, you know, so Gil, is this all hype or is it real? And then you set up the demo. And I remember because Rob, if I can pick on you, Rob was very, not even a hard, difficult customer, but just an impossible customer who was already, you know, negative on them and it made them jump through a lot of hoops. But you know, the goal was always for us to figure out how to help teachers, you know, lessen their workload. To me, it was like medicine. You know, you were seeing your doctor and then all of a sudden they got bombarded with paperwork and you got less minutes with your doctor. And I saw the same thing happening to teachers, and that they get bombarded with so much other paperwork and other distractions. And so the conversation was really about, is this really going to help teachers, you know, save time? And then the demo happened, and you know, I remember you looking over when they were doing, you know, I stopped them because they were in a math section and I asked about a question type, and I said, you know, can you guys show me, but how would a student graph a parabola in this? And you looked over at me and went, yeah, Mr. Gerson at the time, right? You're having a thrill now, aren't you? And I was like, a very, very big one. Yes, that the software was, you know, more closer to what teachers see in IABs. You know, the what you can really do, the integration, as you said, with the grade book, how easily it went back and forth, and just the more, and as they've had even more options, you know, it's just continued to get better. And the fact that teachers can share their formative assessments with each other and not have to do as much work, that the sharing is easier, the collaboration is easier, the PLC is easier. I started to get more and more excited. So, you know, keep sharing it with teachers. I hope that everyone loves it and sees, and I hope it really reduces the workload and makes everyone more efficient. And no, I'm excited by everything that I've seen. In fact, went to the Power School conference just a few weeks ago and saw some of the stuff that they were doing, jumped into the session to see the new additions and how easy it is to collaborate. So thank you for initiating this, spearheading it. I'm glad Rob loves it now. So
well, for the record, it was the #1 when we went to the Centinela Valley shootout 5 years ago. My concern was about sustainability and cost.
So, and Dr. Gerson, I'm glad you reminded us. I think one of our favorite pieces, I know, and I speak for our tech teachers here, was the collaboration piece, right? Where in your PLC group or your grade level group or your department group, you can have lessons, you can have things uploaded at the district level for folks to be able to share and say, oh my gosh, I love that lesson. You know, I'm a teacher over at Wood and I see that someone at UConn just put something up for a fifth grade lesson, and they shared it to the entire district, and it meets the needs right here at my school, because we just had a PLC session. I think we'll bring this in, we'll take a look at it, and if we like it, we'll just download it right into our course. So I think the collaboration piece is huge. It's a large community, so not just within our own district, but the public at large, the other districts out there who are also sharing their great lessons and best practices can be downloaded, examined, tweaked also, and made their own. So yeah, I believe it's a great platform. I'm hoping over the next 4 weeks that it gets traction. There is some good consensus. I know it's going to be a busy next 4 weeks. My hope is that on April 19th, we have a consent item for you to approve the contract. Once that is done, we hit the ground running, hit some milestones when it comes to rollout, training, and really prepping for the summer. We can actually start using some of this, start using Schoology as Rob wants to use for AP courses and AP testing, and then be ready in the fall. For those folks who are really ready for it, right? We'll have the eager beavers, we'll be ready for the eager beavers, and if you just not there yet, that's okay too. Google Classroom is there, but I think you'll start to see the value as we start to have more showcases of the system, that you'll want to dip your toe into this and really join the collective who I believe will come to this system. Our metric for success, I would love to see above 60-70% adoption rate after 3 years. I think that would be pretty good. We'll see how we define success, and I think it will be the amount of time that we save, right? Especially for our teachers and our parents and students, and especially on our end. So.
And I remember back 2 years years ago when Mrs. Liu and I started, and we talked about the 21st century classroom, and and at our CSBA course, talking about how it's almost time for us to start talking about the 22nd century classroom. But that we focus so much on student achievement and leveraging technology, and I think that this, I appreciate that you're taking all the steps you can to use technology to increase student achievement and to decrease workload on teachers. So keep it up.
Definitely. More to come, and it does align with all 5 goals of our LCAP, and I've got that document shared out to all of us and the teachers in our folder that we have. So yeah, we're trying to hit all the angles. So that's all I have, President Liu, unless we have other questions or comments.
I don't see any other questions. So thank you so much, Chief Mara, and your Technology and Information Services team, Rob, Sophia, Tara. Thank you for bringing this on for our schools. The next item is item number 9, oral communications for unscheduled hearings. Back to, actually, the Board of Education welcomes input from the public. Speakers wishing to address the board on non-agenda topics have already completed the appropriate submission form on the district website. Time allotted for public comments on non-agenda items is 3 minutes per comment and for a total of 30 minutes. A speaker may not relinquish his or her time to another. Thank you. Chief Mara, do we have any orals for non-agenda items?
Yes, we do. Let me see if I can, they're still here. Nope. Oh, I hope I didn't scare them all away with my presentation. So I am not finding any of either of the 4 people that listed for unscheduled hearings. President Liu, no, there is no one here. Well, at least let me say that the 4 people that did submit are no longer here tonight.
Okay, thank you. Then that's it. No oral communications tonight. We'll move on to item number 10, discussion and action items. Speakers wishing to address the board on agenda items, agenda topics, have also completed the appropriate submission form on the district website. Please be advised that the time allotted for public comments on agenda items is limited to 3 minutes per comment. Time allotted for each agenda item is 30 minutes per topic. And as you know, a speaker may not relinquish his or her time to another. Item number 10.2, 10.2, approval of the Torrance Unified School District and California School Employees Association, Chapter 19 Collective Bargaining Agreement and the public disclosure of said agreement. Superintendent Stowe?
Yes, the next 3 items actually are just the first 2 are settlements with our employee associations, and then the third one is for certificate management and supervisorial and confidential staff.
Great, thank you. Let's do a motion for each one, and we will need roll call. Is there a motion to approve item number 10.2?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Beat me to it.
A roll call, please, Dr. Stowe.
Okay, Dr. Muhammad,
Yes.
Ms. Park,
Aye.
Dr. Gerson,
Aye.
Mr. Han,
Aye.
Mrs. Lou.
Aye. Item number 10.3, approval of the Torrance Unified School District and California School Employees Association, Chapter 845, Collective Bargaining Agreement and the public disclosure of said agreement.
You go first this time.
We heard a you go first this time.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Roll call, please, Dr. Stowe.
Dr. Muhammad,
Yes.
Ms. Park,
Aye.
Dr. Gerson,
Aye.
Mr. Han,
Aye.
Mrs. Lou.
Aye. Item number 10.4, approval of salary increase for certificated management, classified management, supervisory, confidential, and unrepresented. Anyone want to make a motion?
Move to approve 10.4.
Second.
Thank you. Dr. Stowe?
Dr. Muhammad,
Yes.
Ms. Park,
Aye.
Dr. Gerson,
Aye.
Mr. Han,
Aye.
and Mrs. Lou.
Aye.
Thank you.
Can I make a quick comment? Quick comment.
Yeah,
Just appreciation, Dr. Butler, for all your hard work on this labor negotiations. Just again, it's been a great time, a great season, and thank you just all your hard work and your wisdom in negotiating these contracts. Thank you so much.
Very kind of you, of course, a team led with, or part of many people, of which you see Dr. Liberati, Dr. Kim, and Dr. Egan here, and many others. So thank you.
great, thank you. Consent agenda, item number 11, approval of consent agenda as a whole. All matters listed on the consent calendar, from general functions consent through administrative services bond consent, are considered to be routine and will be enacted with one vote. There's no discussion of consent calendar items unless members of the governing board, public, or staff request that specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Is there anyone who wants to remove any items from the consent calendar?
I'd like to remove 12.3.
12.3. Anybody else? Do we have a motion to approve consent items 12.1, 12.2, 12.4 to 7, no, a lot, to 18.6?
So moved.
Seconded. Oh.
And for this, Dr. Stowe, roll call or hands?
Yes, let me do roll call. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Muhammad,
Yes.
Ms. Park,
Aye.
Dr. Gerson,
Aye.
Mr. Han,
Aye.
and Mrs. Lou.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes for those items. Vice President Han, would you like to talk about 12.3?
Yes. Obviously, 12.3 is to adopt a resolution denouncing xenophobia and anti-Asian American and Pacific Islander sentiment due to the COVID-19 pandemic and affirming the district's commitment to the well-being and safety of Asian Americans. I want to express my gratitude that we as a district are making a stance against this. Obviously, we've heard about the rise of Asian American hate crimes due to the pandemic itself. And I think that, again, especially what we've learned with Black Lives Matters, as well as all groups of people, that we need to respect, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, whatever it may be, that we include and appreciate the dignity of every individual. And especially me being an Asian American, is very significant. I know what it's like to be treated in a very bigoted way or in a very racist way, name calling and being made fun of. So often we're called ourselves the silent majority because we don't speak out, but I think it's time for us Asian Americans to speak out. And especially today, I'm not sure if you heard about the Oscars. Today was a very proud moment for we have the first Asian American actor being nominated for the Oscar for Best Actor. And We have Best Director, Best Supporting Actress, Best Screenplay for the movie Minari. And for many of you, it may not feel like significant, but for us, to see an Asian face being represented, it's huge because it makes us believe that we are part of our society. And I think that it's reflective of what we all believe in as Americans. And so I appreciate and thankful for this. And I hope that all of us could really encourage and be a blessing to especially the Asian Americans around us.
Thank you very much, Vice President Han. I agree completely. I actually wrote that resolution, so I'm happy that you like it. Thanks. Item number 19 is board calendar for all to see.
Mrs. Liu, you need to have a motion and a second to vote on that item. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stowe. Is there a motion to approve item number 12.3?
Absolutely. I move that we adopt this resolution.
I'll second it.
Okay, Dr. Muhammad,
Yes.
Ms. Park,
Aye.
Dr. Gerson,
Aye.
Mr. Han,
Aye.
and President Liu.
Aye. Motion passes for approval of 12.3. So we can move on to item number 20, comments from members of the Board of Education. We'll start with item 20.1, report from board representative to the Southern California Regional Occupational Center.
There is nothing to update because our board meeting is this Wednesday. And so I'll update it to our next board meeting.
Okay. And next, I would like to go to Dr. Gerson, who is a California School Board Association delegate. Is there a report from CSBA?
We had a regional meeting last week. It was actually the first regional meeting run by our new director. We spent a lot of time discussing what's going to be happening this week. The California School Boards Association is doing Legislative Action Week. On Wednesday, we are currently scheduled to meet with Assemblymember Muratsuchi and with California Senator Ben Allen. And I know Mrs. Liu, you'll be attending these meetings as well. Appreciate the support. And we're still waiting to hear when California Senator Stephen Bradford will be available to also meet with us. And I will let you know next time how our meetings go.
Thank you, Dr. Gerson. For regular oral communication from anyone, we'll start with Dr. Mohammed. Do you have any oral communications for today?
Yeah, thank you so much, President Liu. This past couple of weeks, I've been able to attend the Budget Advisory Committee as well as, with the Masters in Governance program. So I finished my first course and just looking forward to continuing on with the remaining 4 courses. So outside of that, no other comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Ms. Park?
Yeah, I wanted to thank everyone who reached out to me and all of the other board members prior to tonight's board meeting. I know that I've had a little bit difficulty responding to everyone, but I just wanted to let you know that your voices were heard, all of your emails were read, and your input was taken into consideration. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to express that, and also wanted to, just thank the district for really prioritizing, and particularly Dr. Stowe for prioritizing the board's equipping the board with the skills and the knowledge that we need to make decisions that we can be confident about, that are rooted in the wisdom that the CSBA has gathered over the years by really encouraging us to sign up for the Masters in Governance courses. And we're going to continue to attend them over the course of the next couple of months. And I've already felt that it's been really beneficial in allowing me to just also, in addition to, absorbing the information from the presenters, having the opportunity to talk to other school board members across California, and really realizing how fortunate we are to have a cabinet and a board that work well together, and even within our board, having just the baseline of assuming good intentions of one another. I kind of took that for granted, and I think it was another reminder about how unique and how precious it is.
Thank you, Ms. Park. Dr. Gerson, do you have anything else to add?
I also wanted to thank Dr. Stowe for bringing us all together and having us all take the Masters in Governance courses. Even though we don't get the opportunity to work with each other during the meetings, where we are taking separate sessions or being put in different breakout groups. So it'll be nice at a time that we can come together and discuss all of the lessons that we took from it and how we can use that to work better as a board. And I did want to make a comment about, you guys know how involved I've been over the years with the Torrance Sister City Association. We have a very close relationship with Kashiwa, Japan, and that our Japanese residents have been such an important part of Torrance's development. All the way from the city council stance back when Japanese internment was happening and that Torrance was a safe place. And now especially our Korean population is growing so fast, and as just Torrance becomes more diverse, it amazes me when I see images of the violence, because we all of us who live in Torrance have so many friends who are Asian, and we do all love you and we do appreciate you, and you are extremely valued members. I mean, look at our board, 3 Asian members represented on it, and you're doing great achievements for our city, and just know that you are loved and appreciated, and I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gerson. Anything else to add, Vice President Han?
Dr. Gerson, thank you so much for your remarks. It's very well appreciated and well received, and we do appreciate your sentiments in every way. And I think that it's always important that we express these sentiments to one another in every way. Again, I want to concur with Ms. Park in the same way that we are grateful for all the letters and emails and calls that we received. We've been inundated, but again, your voice is heard and it's well appreciated. And we want you to know that we do read them, we do get them, and we do try to respond to as many as possible. And so obviously this meeting was a big meeting regarding reopening schools, and we've taken your comments seriously. And it's not an easy decision for us, but we want you to know that they've been heard and well received. Again, I want to thank the cabinet and all the people for making this possible after this year's pandemic itself. Just one final comment. LAUSD today announced that they're going to have commencement one way or another. And I said to myself, well, then we can do it as well. And so my hope is that we will be able to have a commencement, and that it'll be better than theirs. I'm just kidding, but in all seriousness, that we would be able to do something to celebrate our seniors. And again, it's they can make that announcement. I don't know why we shouldn't, and I know that we're more than capable to do it. And so I want all the public community to know that we're going to work hard to make sure that we can do this commencements for our seniors this year.
Mrs. Liu, I'm sorry to go out of order, but if I could just add to it, Mr. Han said, on Friday, Dr. Ferrer did announce at her weekly update for K-12 schools that the state is working, that they just started working on protocols. So absolutely, it looks like that we're going to get something. And so I agree with Mr. Han. We'll be on the lookout for it.
Great, thank you. I share the same sentiment as my fellow board members, Ms. Park, Dr. Gerson, Vice President Han, and Dr. Mohammed, when I say that we're very thankful to all the parents and teachers and students, even in reaching out to us on the issue of school reopening. I think we as a whole want to especially thank all of you here on the cabinet, as led by Dr. Stowe, in opening things up. And I trust that it will be all safe and it'll all work out. Another oral item I have is that I was invited to attend a national PTA legislative conference last week. Their focuses this year are federal investment in education, safe and equitable schools, and investments in school infrastructure. So I want to publicly thank the National PTA, the State PTA, District 33, and our local Torrance Council PTA for continuing to do a great job at advocating for our schools as students, as they have for over 120 years. And lastly, I like to shine some light on item number 15.3, which is approval for the Torrance Unified School District 2021 GATE Parent Conference. This is the 6th annual GATE Conference. The 6th annual GATE Conference will include informative sessions facilitated by TUSD staff and a keynote speaker, with priority registration given to parents of gifted students in grades 3 to 8. We anticipate approximately 300 to 500 attendees. Sessions will support GATE parents and guardians in topics such as social emotional needs of gifted children, supporting your gifted and talented student at home. This conference will be held virtually over Zoom on Saturday, May 1st, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. As a former parent coordinator of GATE for a couple of different schools for a few years, I applaud our superintendent, Dr. Stowe, and our curriculum director, Mrs. Heinrich, along with other GATE teachers for putting on this conference year after year. And I just want to emphasize that it is not only for the identified GATE students, but if there is room, we very much welcome all students to participate and all parents to participate as well. Now that we're done with orals, we can have item 21, adjournment in memorandum. Adjournment in memory of retired high school assistant principal secretary, Betty Macy, and high school teacher, Robert Hotel. Is there a motion for such?
Can I add a little bit? So can I make a comment before we close? To the Pearson family, our hearts are with you and we are praying for you. Just want to make a shout out. Our hearts are definitely with you and we are definitely praying for you.
We definitely
Amen.
are, all of us.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.